Tonight on Ship Chasing, FFPC playoff week rolls on. Tonight is a pivotal night for getting us set for entering lineups into this contest because Pat Crane has been in the lab working on his ownership projections, which are the skeleton key to help you figuring out how to build lineups that can win first place in this contest. He's done it year after year and always has an incredible hit rate on predicting what the field is going to do. So we're going to go team by team on these tonight, get them battle tested, stress tested, and in really good shape. And if you guys are in the Ship Chasing Discord, you guys can follow along. There will be a Google Sheet to said ownership projections. And also a special treat. Our friend Mike Leone is going to be joining us for a bit tonight as well. This is Ship Chasing Playoff Week with Pete, Pat, Gretch, and guest Leone. Let's do it. Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Hanjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar. Alpha play chase. Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally Pittsburgh. You're right.
Man, seeing that alpha play Jamar Chase in the intro and realizing we don't get to have him in this playoff slate is such a bummer that the Bengals aren't part of this.
It really is.
Definitely.
Leone, welcome to the show. A little pleasant surprise to have you joining us tonight.
What's up? I'm excited. This is the greatest week. I get to annoy you guys with constant messages for the next 3 to 4 weeks. I'm looking forward to it.
It is one of those times where, like, I step away, I draft some gauntlet teams, I'm like, it's good. Catching up on my playoff baseball stuff, and I come back to, like, 85 messages.
Me and Leone were going back and forth for a bit today.
Yes. This is what happens. Like, we got off the show last night with Hassan and Blair, and then we had a chat going with them for a while. I mean, you just go down, infinite rabbit holes when you start trying to think about this contest. Love seeing comments like this too. Michael says, I don't even play FFPC playoff, and these are my favorite shows each year in the playoffs. So even if you aren't playing, hopefully you guys can find some nuggets. I know there's all kinds of playoff contests going on. We're doing some fun ones over at Fantasy Life with the Guillotine Leagues. There's a chop contest where it's kind of like the FFPC where you set it and forget it, but 25% of the field is cut down after each week. So then you have to balance the same things, kind of like ownership, survival, but optimizing for the playoffs as well. All right. Pat just dropped in the Discord the sheet to view his ownership projections that I'm going to pull up on screen here. I'm going to
make a copy. I originally had this be allowed to be edited by people.
No, Pat.
No, this is like 2 years ago, and people did some crazy things to that sheet. It was never the same. So it's view only. Make a copy, and then you can sort and filter and all that stuff.
How about this, Pat? I know I kind of said it at the top, but explain maybe for people why ownership projections are so important for this contest.
Well, first of all, this is a very top-heavy contest in payout structure, so it's important to finish first. And as we talked about yesterday, there's going to be duplicated lineups. So, you don't want to be duped, and you like finding a unique path to first place is extremely profitable as opposed to like splitting third, right? You wouldn't want to do that in this contest. And so you're trying to, there's also spots where, because it's a contest where heavy chalk condenses, you can pivot off of some of that with some smart leverage plays and get yourself a big leg up on the field. So I think that's kind of the pitch for why ownership matters.
Yep. Gretch, any thoughts on how you think about the ownership when you start to, lay out these brackets and kind of sketch out the teams you want to build?
There's so many, right? We talked about this last night, how like it takes whatever, 5 minutes to learn and a lifetime to master this contest. I mean, Pat just did a really good job of explaining it, but there's so many ways obviously to then play off of that. Every team's going to be unique. Every position is going to be unique. I think when we go through this, we typically go each year team by team and talk about it, but there's also the constraints of each position, right? Like this year, for example, we talked about a lot last night, tight end. Feels like there's going to be some real constraints on that position because the top 5 scoring tight ends and points per game are not in the playoffs. And so you have, and Kelsey's the next one, and then there's a few more, and then you get down to these guys that are a few points behind even Kelsey, and it feels like one of those guys is going to be the pivot, right? Or like, well, Kelsey's going to be played a lot. Maybe it will just be Kelsey. And there's all these constraints just within the tight end position, and then what those impacts are on the teams, their individual teams, right?
Yeah, and it's an interesting contest because some of those pivots, I try to anticipate what those pivots are, and then bring the ownership up on the pivot, because it's like the worst thing you can do is be like, the best pivot is this because no one's going to play it, and then everyone plays it, right?
Yeah.
So I brought up Wolfie's one of the guys that I brought up quite a bit. Sorry, I just said that.
So, Leone, because I think the risk, and we might have ran into this last night at the end of the show with Blair and Hassan, where we basically built a lineup with every pivot possible. And it is possible to over leverage yourself. How do you think about that element? Because you think about this in DFS all the time, like in a contest, like even the Thunderdome, where it's like you want to be unique, but you don't have to necessarily go super off the board.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to find the middle ground of like the odds of all the plays like actually giving you enough points to win and being different from the field. And I feel like playing this contest with you guys the last few years, the thing that we're generally focused on is a lot of the field either goes way too chalky or then makes like these galaxy brain plays that are like super thin and you don't need to make them when you can play. Sometimes you can play legitimately like the third, second best fantasy option on a team at like 2%. You don't need to play Keon Coleman at 1%, for example, when you could play, Romeo Doubs or Jaden Reed, the team's arguably their top 2 wide receivers. So finding that middle ground.
And another thing, and I think we hit on this maybe once or twice last night, and we'll probably reference it a lot, that those maybe thinner plays are a lot more viable if you're playing a one and done scenario, because when a team gets multiple games, it's more and more likely that the alphas on the team are going to pass them. So we talked about like Puka versus Cooper Kupp. Could Kupp outscore him in a one game? Sure, maybe. But then if you had a second game in a third game, what are the chances he actually outscores him over that sample? And so that's another thing.
Because you're reducing variance with more of a sample size at that point.
Yep. Shout out in the chat. We got a few new members here looking to hop in the Discord and check out the sheet. And also our guy Keith gifting 5 memberships. Appreciate that. If you guys have not been in the Discord, the way it works, if you're a YouTube member, there's a link to the Deposit Kingdom Discord down below. You hop in, you sync your YouTube in Discord YouTube and Discord accounts. There's instructions in the FAQ. It's really easy. And then it will unlock the Ship Chasing Discord, where I have now pinned that sheet. Pat,
and can I just jump in a couple more things just about the contest? So you don't play 2 teams at all. You just don't select anything from those 2 teams. And then you also don't select a skill player, including quarterback in that. You don't play a player in your lineup from 2 additional teams. One is kicker, one is defense. So if you think about the way that works, there's 4 teams that you're basically not picking someone on. You're betting against them in that particular lineup. You're hoping they lose in round 1. That's the best outcome for you. That means that if you're building a few lineups, you're not playing, 4 teams on one lineup. And then the next lineup, you're like, oh, I didn't play the Broncos in this lineup. I'm going to play them in this other one, right? You're probably playing Sutton. And so this is kind of a response to the what is Marvin Mims percentage? Less than 1%. On all those types of plays, less than 1%. And the way to think about that is because most people just aren't playing the Broncos at all. And this applies obviously to the Steelers. This is going to apply to the Packers. This is going to condense ownership
Possibly
on the
Chargers and
Chargers and Texans. Those teams they're going to go to the studs because it's like, well, I didn't play the Texans, so now I'm going to play the Texans and I'm going to play Dalton Schultz. No, you're probably going to play Joe Mixon or Nico Collins.
Yeah, that's the big thing Leone hit on when he said the second guy. That's the biggest mistake I see with some of the lineups and some of the comments and some of the chat stuff. It's been a thing in DFS for years. It was a mistake for me in DFS for years. Was I always wanted to just find that low owned guy. But in DFS, because of the constraint of only one player per team, it's more of a thing here where you don't need to get to those players. There's 12 players in this lineup, and there's only one player per team. So the vast majority of people aren't going to get off of Saquon Barkley on the Eagles, and if they do, they're going to go to A.J. Brown. And so Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert are just sitting there.
Yeah.
They're not going to be played.
Smith, I had it 2% in this. Like Chris asking if a couple people, like a couple percent Galbrain to Mims. In the $35 contest, people will do like a little bit more Galbrain stuff, but this content's geared to the $200 one. That's like what I'm going to sync up these projections with and see how well I did. And in there, like, no, they won't. Like they'll play Sutton, or they'll play the Broncos fade, Broncos kicker, Broncos defense. Like if you're not playing Sutton and you're spending $200 on the lineup, then you're probably just not playing the Broncos.
The other thing with Pat mentioning that, there's 4 teams that you're fading, like either soft fade or hard fade. I mean, 6 teams are losing round 1, first of all. So if you just take a skill player on one of the lesser picked teams that's going to lose and you soft fade one of the other teams, sometimes you can pick up a lot of points that way. The other thing too is, again, instead of getting like full on Galaxy Brain, sometimes you can play like the clear best player on a team that people just think is going to lose. I know Pat just mentioned Sutton might be owned because of that, but there was the year that we always reference the Cam Akers year that Pat was on Cam Akers, and they were like 40% to win round 1, and no one took the clear best play because they were the underdog round 1, and they had like a 45% chance of winning. So you can definitely find, I don't know if I see like an obvious one this year, but there's definitely sometimes these matchups where it teams like 40% to win and people are treating them like,
and they're like 75% faded.
Yeah.
It's a little different this year because there's 2 huge spreads. And so those teams are likely going to get faded, the ones that are underdogs. I was also going to mention real quick on the 1% owned thing and the chat asking these questions. There's 7,500 entries in this. We learned this with Jake Ferguson last year. He was like 1.8% or something, but 1% is 75 teams. So even if you play a guy at 1% and get him right, you're not like winning the contest strictly because of that. You're now in a 75 team. You've made it incredibly more advantageous, but you got to get the 11 other players right. I mean, there's 75 other teams that have that player in their build. And so there's like this trade-off of like it's both. I'm not trying to act like it's not going to be advantageous to get a 1% guy right, but it's both a thin play and it's also not the like home run that people I think of, because the Ferguson thing last year, it was like, God, he's so low owned. Maybe it won't even be a Ferguson team that wins, but it's like there was enough Ferguson teams. I'm pretty sure he ended up in the winner, but
the optimal doesn't win is maybe another way of putting it.
It does work both ways though, where like what Gretch is saying is true, that you're not auto winning if you get this right. You still have other things to get right. So if you're going to do a 1% own play, like, you probably don't want to get a 2 Galbrain with your other picks because the odds of you getting 2 of those right is probably very low. But the flip side is we do see weird circumstances where like we just think we're dead after 2 games because a guy went nuts, or like only those teams can win and then something else wins.
Right.
But sometimes the
Ferguson
winner
was
like,
not on the winner per
Ferguson was
this comment here.
Yeah, sometimes the winner is like really far off the optimal, which is important. Like you don't need to be optimal, which sometimes changes the way you think too, where it's like, yeah, I could make this play because it could work out in my favor, but like I can still win the contest even if it, you can win it even if 1% Ferguson is there. Obviously, if you played Ferguson, that's amazing. So like, and we actually kind of like I think we played like 2% Ferguson, and we kind of wish we had played more. So there are 1%
paired with Reed a little too much. Yeah, it's just one of those. It's
because that's the thing that's the point I'm trying to make.
Guys you want to play. There's just some guys that are like really thin.
It's not just about the Ferguson play itself. It's about the 12-leg parlay of getting all of it right. And so like we did play a little Ferguson, but you're like, well, this is a team where we did these things at QB and everywhere else. And so people think like, oh, I can just play all the chalk and get this one surprising star player, but you got to build like a whole lineup that tells a story for your bracket and all that stuff,
It would be the equivalent if you were playing salary cap DFS, say like the Marvin Mims Sutton thing, and both Sutton and Mims were the Stoneman 3,000, and they were both going to be like, one was going to be 3% owned and one was going to be 1% owned. you would play Cortland Sutton. You're like, I'm going to take that target buff. Like, could you like shave off a little bit, but like, what are you actually gaining from that?
That's a good way really good way to put it.
Let's see. Oh yeah.
Right, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Pat, let's pull this up. Do you want to start filter on your sheet to a team and then
To
we
a
can
team?
go?
Yeah. Do you want to go? I have it fairly easy sorted by. Should we go 7 to 1? 7 seeds to 1 seeds, or
Probably
Sure.
do the
1 to
matchups,
7?
I think, right?
Matchups?
Both sides
Okay.
of the games.
Yeah, that's
tell me
cool.
a team. I'll bring it up.
Baltimore, Pittsburgh.
Okay.
All right.
That's easy because Baltimore's the number 1.
Okay. And then
okay.
I might have you just zoom a little bit, Pat, just so these numbers are bigger.
I think you got a Zoom.
Oh,
I think,
is it me?
I
Oh,
think
you're right.
sharing. Yeah,
I'm sharing. Duh.
the sheet.
You're
yeah.
filtering. I'm sharing.
Right.
Here we go. Okay.
You can adjust the 100% up there too. That's an easier way to do.
All right.
Oh yeah, there
Okay,
we
that
go.
works. Okay.
Now we're
All right.
All right.
Do we want to actually stop sharing? Should we talk about the fades for the total teams first, or?
I think it's fine to go team by
Okay.
team, and then we
Okay.
can we could do a little macro at the end.
Sounds good. Okay. So Derrick Henry, I think, will be pretty chalky. One of the chalkiest players in the field. I've got him. He's like 3, 4, 5, 6. He's the 7th chalkiest guy I have right now. What the heck? What just happened? Oh, you know what? Because I sorted
Somebody
on
have
this
edit
sheet.
access on there.
No, it's because I'm feeding from another sheet and I changed that sheet.
Oh,
And now I'm showing
got
everything. All right.
Sheets on sheets.
Production value. Okay. Sorry. So Derrick Henry, 55%. Lamar Jackson, secondary chalk at quarterback. Mark Andrews, kind of the pivot play. And then basically nothing else. And then Pittsburgh is going to be heavily faded. I have them as the heaviest faded team, even more than Denver. Kicker, catching a decent amount here. Defense, Pickens, and then I think Freiermuth, basically a bucket for him and anything else.
Yeah, I don't like the way you have the top 3 Ravens makes a ton of sense. Obviously, the tight end premium is doing some heavy lifting with Mark Andrews. And just the positional scarcity this year, I think, is going to keep him a little higher than normal. But because Henry and Jackson are so strong, like it's just hard to imagine him pulling any more than that.
And Zay, not being fully healthy is
that's big. Yeah.
and the thing on Zay, like I don't think you can Galbrain into Zay because you would need Baltimore to play multiple games, obviously, for Zay to catch up. And then if they do play, let's say 3 games, you're really up against it fighting against Lamar teams. So that's just, kind of an example of where you probably don't need to get too crazy, even though someone might look at it and see, oh, no one's going to play Zay Flowers if he comes back and dominates round 2. But I just don't see it on a play like that.
Yeah, and I was looking
for years we've done the QB has to be in the Super Bowl champion, but we learned last year. I mean, Mahomes played 4 games, and Kelsey was good enough to be the tight end, and Allen was the QB in 2 games. And so, I mean, even in the scenarios where the Ravens play 2 games and Zay has 1 big game, the way that Lamar scores, he's probably in the mix to be the QB as well, right? In 2 games or in 3 games, especially. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Super Bowl run for Baltimore.
And if it's 2 games, you got to beat Henry and Andrews, which is, a tough hill to climb. So you probably need 3, and then it's probably, Lamar, if not Henry at that point. But, tight end being weird. I mean, Freiermuth looks low.
Maybe he is low. We'll get to the Kelsey thing because it's sort of boxes you in, I think, just how unappealing the other Chiefs are. But open to maybe him being too low. The Lamar thing is that if he's optimal in 2 games, one of those games was a loss to the Bills, most likely. And so now you really need James Cook or Dalton Kincaid to be going nuts so that Allen isn't the optimal, which feels a little thin to me. That's where I think the winner of that game will be the optimal quarterback most likely.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
What total tight end percentage did you do? I know this is early for this, but you just mentioned the Kelsey thing, and you always talk about this a little bit, and I know you've looked at it historically at those different positions because we've talked about it in past years. Did you take the flex for tight end down this year?
So it's actually up from last year, but last year we didn't really have any options other than Kelsey. It was like you either played Kelsey, we didn't have Andrews, so it was a little tough. It was 119%, and last year, and I have it 126% this year, which is one of the reasons I don't have anything for Freiermuth, because it's just like you don't need the tight. It's like you have Kelsey, but you also have Andrews. You have Ertz, who I think will catch some ownership. It's way down from like 2022 was at 155%. 2021 was 185%.
Wow.
2020 was 152. That's as far back as I have it. So the last 2 years I'm basically treating as different than the years preceding that.
Yeah.
But right now it's actually slightly higher than last year.
Makes sense. The Pittsburgh also, just in terms of, we're going to look through all the ownership and everything, but we're also going to talk obviously a little bit of strategy and stuff for the people who are thinking about making teams. Pittsburgh's an example of one of these teams where, because people have an impulse to play players that they want to play both sides of the close games in the wild card round so that they lock in a winner. One of the things we always talk about, we talked about it a little bit last night, is if you, on these teams that are likely to lose, if you do get a big game out of one of their skill players, they can still very easily be the optimal player, because we know a minimum of 6 teams are going to lose in the first round. A minimum of 2 players that are non-fades or even soft fades are going to be in every lineup that played one game. And so if you make the decision to play a Steeler, you're already gaining leverage, because so much of the field is, and it is going to be like this, where the field's going to say, I want to play both sides of other games where I want to keep my options open, but there's going to be a lot of fades. There's going to be a lot of people playing the kicker and D and kind of soft fading Pittsburgh. If George Pickens has 175 and 2 and a loss, he's a really good play at 14%. He's literally the best player on Pittsburgh, and you're getting leverage there. That's the way this contest works.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it too, like if I was looking at the odds, just looking at like the money line for the games, and then what that implied the odds were that each of these teams wins. Pittsburgh has a 20% chance per Vegas to beat the Bills. They were plus 400. So then you look at like a team like the Commanders, and they're 41% chance to beat the Bucs, or the Texans are 43% chance to beat the Chargers. So like I have like more than 2x as many people fading the Steelers compared to those teams. So, it's like a ton of people will fade the Steelers in this, but also like, of course they will. They don't have any real chance of winning the game. Like, it actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, they should be. They should be heavily faded, but I don't think people have any trouble just being like, I'm not playing the Steelers. Like, most lineups will come preloaded without a Bronco or a Steeler.
But they're pretty concentrated. I mean,
they are.
It's Pickens, or it's potentially Freiermuth if you want to get to the tight end. No one's going to play Najee Harris. No one's going to play Russell Wilson and think they're going to go on some big run, right? I mean,
there's also like a roughly 40% chance that one of Denver or Pittsburgh wins.
That's crazy.
35%.
Wild.
That is wild.
You're the math guy, bringing us back to reality here.
I gotta check my joint probability distribution or not. Maybe it's more like, even if you, let's say 30%, 35%, like there's probably greater than 1 in 3 chance that one of those teams wins. And I think the field perceives it like more like these teams are like
10%.
That's probably what it is, because you can't.
If you told me 20%, I would have thought that was high.
Well, there's a 20% chance Pittsburgh wins alone.
Yeah, that's crazy.
The other thing too that, and again, like remembering, I would say that most people putting entries into this contest aren't necessarily doing big volume. You know, I'd say like even a lot would be somewhere from 5 to 10 for most people, you know, just on average. Like it's really hard to sit down with your second or third bullet and be like, let me fire up Pat Freiermuth, or like, let me play the Steelers as a win. Like the reason these ownerships stay so low is because it's so many people just doing a handful of entries. If you had everyone 100 maxing or whatever it was, like then that calculus would change a bit more.
Who wants to make that bet on Pittsburgh to win? No one wants to make that.
No
bet.
one wants to make that bet. Yeah.
But like Ken's saying, you can kind of set it up as a free roll a little bit, where you hope they win, but if they don't, you're not screwed because you got to play 2 skill players that are losing no matter what.
Everyone's playing players from teams that are losing. Yeah, we all are.
We were talking about doing like Pickens, Andrews, and then you get on to Josh Allen because you're saying if Pittsburgh does win, then you get Josh. I mean, it's pretty clearly going to be Josh Allen, and Andrews makes a lot of sense in a one and done as your potential tight end option. Or, I mean, maybe even Henry. He scores 2 touchdowns in a high scoring loss. But you can play it, free roll that.
The only other comment I saw in the chat, a few people thought Lamar seemed low. Yeah, go ahead.
He might be. We'll go to the next game. I think it'll help me dial in if he is actually low. We can. He may be low.
The reason do you know what this ownership percentage may be? Because if Hurts was fully healthy and there was like 0 issues around that, I think that they would kind of pull from each other. But if we keep progressing throughout the week, and obviously we're going to get news, I would think eventually, but if we have that uncertainty hanging over, then it's like maybe Lamar just starts ticking up more and more.
It's almost like DFS where we're getting the guy ruled in, but like if he passes concussion protocol like right before, as everyone's kind of figured out what they're doing, he's not going to be played. I have him reasonably played, like I think 12%. We'll get to it, but you kind of want to see people's reaction to that, because if he is too high, then Lamar is too low. I think some of that comes from Andrews, who people don't really need to play. A little comes from Henry. Sounds like people think Freiermuth's a little low as well. He might be like 2 and Pickens comes down.
I'd probably bet, you know, I'd take 3 points from Hurts to Lamar and take it off Andrews, probably.
Yeah, okay.
But
we'll plan for that.
And I could see just the way, obviously, the tight end premium and just how many bagels and bad games Pickens is coming off of. There's like no good recency bias that makes you feel cozy. Like at least with Cortland Sutton, you can be like, you know, he's had over 7 targets in the past couple of games. Like you're not getting that with Pickens right now.
Yep. One other thing I thought would be kind of interesting would be, so people were asking what the highest faded team was last year, and I have that handy.
It was the Steelers with Mason Rudolph.
Steelers with Mason Rudolph. 95% of the field did not play a Steelers player, so that I'm going to include kicker and defense into the fades here. But 95% of the field faded the Steelers. 2 years ago, we had the Tyler Huntley Ravens. 89% of the field faded them. 3 years ago, the Eagles were 88% faded, and
was Hurts
4 years
hurt?
ago. Yeah, I was like, why? That's so high.
I think that's when they were pretty big dogs to Tampa Bay and Brady, I think.
I remember that
that's
game,
right.
yeah.
It was when he was first. It was like Hurts' first year as a
I
starter.
think we played a good bit of Goddard that year. Yeah.
And the year before in 2020, it was Washington, and they were 82% faded.
That's when they were huge dogs at Tampa Bay with Taylor Heineke.
Yeah.
And
they
there's
almost
usually-
won that game. They had the ball in the fourth quarter down 5.
God. There's usually another team, like LA was faded 74% of the time in 2020. New England
Miami
was
started
faded
someone other
79%
than
of the time.
Tua a couple years ago. They started like who?
Yeah,
Tyler Thompson.
Miami was 82% that year. Seattle was 86 because I think they weren't. Did they have Geno hurt?
They were just
I can't
bad.
remember. They were just bad.
They were just
Green Bay last year was 74% faded. So there's usually like not just one mega faded team, but 2. And this year, I think pretty clearly it'll be the Steelers and the Broncos. I have it at 85 Steelers and 80 for the Broncos.
That Miami year, I think like their DST was optimal when the Chargers kicker was. And
That's
like
right.
no
I
one
remember that.
Dude, that's right.
No one played, like everyone hard faded them. No one soft faded I think Sanders was actually awesome too, but the DST ended up being optimal. But just no one played even the kicker or DST. They just straight up hard faded everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it is
Right.
The bracket feels weird this year. And Ben was talking about it. Like, I don't know, aren't there usually more big dogs round one or no? I don't know. I guess we have two big dogs.
It's a weird year for sure.
All right, Pat, let's head to our next matchup. What do you want to dial up?
Let's go to the Eagles. And here, I switched it so that I'm sharing. The Eagles and the Packers.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So Barkley. So I've made the change. I lowered Hurts from 12 to 9 based on your guys' notes. Lamar went up from 27 to 30. A little more to Devontae Smith at 3. People were real psyched at him at 2, so he comes up to 3. AJ Brown goes to 11. Saquon up to 70, making him the chalkiest player I have projected. And then Josh Jacobs, I think, will catch a decent amount of ownership. He's still like pretty highly drafted in the playoff best ball stuff. He's just such an obvious way to play the Packers. You don't have to worry. Like, no one wants to try to predict which guy. I mean, Kraft maybe kept this is probably high for Kraft, to be honest. He's probably more like 2. And then people will fade them at a pretty high clip as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about the bracket this year with the Ravens and Bills both being such big favorites is even if one of those teams does get upset, then you have the other one. Say, we got Leone here. Say the Ravens get upset. The Bills are now a home team against a weaker opponent in the second round. So it's more likely to be Josh Allen, and KC's opponent just got weaker. Instead of having like the Chargers potentially, or maybe Houston coming to them, they get Pittsburgh or whatever. And now the Bills are playing the winner of Houston and the Chargers, which means even if you want to play something wonky on the AFC side, the bracket it just gets chalkier. It just sets up for an AFC title game that's KC versus the non-upset Buffalo or Baltimore team. That's the way you would just play it in the second round. My point being, I do think a lot of people are going to, because you double up on 2 of the 6 matchups in the wild card round with actual players. You play both sides of it. I do think a lot of people are going to do both of those on the NFC side. I think they're going to do potentially this Philly and Green Bay game or either of the other 2 games, but maybe the Rams and Vikings are going to be the most likely with Puka and Jefferson. But this one is, I think you're right about having Jacobs there because people are just like, I'm going to play the AFC side as being pretty chalk and play the NFC side as being a little bit tough to predict.
Yeah, and so I think you want to compare Jacobs to like Mixon and Nico on the other side. Mixon, to the Texans. It's like I can take Jacobs or I can take a Texan, but I got to figure out which Texan I want to take. Jacobs is like, I think comfier. Or people fade the Packers more than I'm thinking. That's kind of that's one of the things that I need to like get sentiment on throughout the week.
I feel like you're right on Jacobs. I mean, they've been playing such boomer ball, and like you said, people have the vibes with the Texans are so bad.
No one wants to play the Texans.
No one wants to play the Texans to win, let alone, like you said, have to decide between 2 guys. Mixon's on a pretty bad run after having, a pretty good season before that. I think you're right here with Jacobs being pretty high owned.
And Barkley, I wanted to ask, what's the highest in the field like last year and the year before? You were just doing some of the highest fades. Who are the highest individual players?
Yeah, that's a huge difference this year too.
The highest individual players last year?
In actual ownership the last couple of years.
We had some Devontae Adams 90% years.
I'll pull it up.
90%.
Yeah.
There was
last year, CeeDee Lamb 87%.
Wow.
Christian McCaffrey 79, Amon-Ra 78, Pittsburgh fade 76, Green Bay fade 59, Tyreek 50. So that's everyone 50% or above, and then I pull up 2022 quickly. Let's see.
But like
very
4
top one you
skill
said was
players
89.
higher than the highest guy you have this year. So it's like definitely a different dynamic.
Yeah, and 2 years ago, McCaffrey 77, Justin Jefferson 77, Kelsey 74, Eckler 70, couple fades.
So,
Miami
can I
fades
ask
with
you
77.
why in your projections are you not going higher? Do you think that the field is going to be a little bit sharper? Are you noticing a trend like that? Like
I mean,
on the pivots?
It wasn't intentional to keep things low. That like it's more that like, you know, maybe I have Hurts way too high, right? Maybe people just don't play Hurts. Maybe people just don't play AJ Brown. But when you think about like Gibbs, Amon-Ra's an incredible play. So I think Amon-Ra kind of keeps him in check. He's one of the candidates to be super chalk, but he's kept in check. Kelsey's kept in check by like not really being Kelsey anymore. Like people aren't going to want to click him. They feel like they have to click him probably a decent amount, but they don't want to.
But Saquon's the one where they're the 2 seed. They had a great year. He's the highest scoring running back. Like even Philly DST 4%. I feel like that's just all going to go to Saquon.
You're probably right that people just don't fade Philly.
I do think the dynamic is different though this year than any other year, just in the makeup of the teams. Like Pat's saying, he didn't do it intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just when you go team by team, even like who you want to play, like even projection wise, there shouldn't be players as highly owned as they were last year.
That's right.
Directionally,
and that's what he was just describing. Like when you go through the team, it's just not clear.
Saquon maybe comes high, but like, God, if you play, you know, Philly's like 35% to lose, you know, a running back who doesn't catch passes and a loss.
Yeah, and part of it, Ben, was like, I think like, what are we trying to do? And like, we're immediately like, oh, let's play some AJ Brown. You know, I could see us. Now, part of it too is I don't know the Hurts status yet, so I have it like a little bit. The fade is probably a little too high. I'm kind of middling that a little bit. Like, I think that'll come down to
3% Barkley in the end.
Eagles moved to 4.5.
Yeah.
The Packers still have pretty good odds to make it to the Super Bowl. As you were saying, people are still playing the futures on the Packers. Like in the underdog streets, people are still drafting Packers because they have the 4th best odds in the entire.
I know, it's weird.
NFC as a 7 seed.
Yeah, probably hot the Philly fade. That probably comes down.
Leone,
it is interesting. I mean, this is like the only one. Those other teams you named, everything you said made perfect sense. This is the only one where I feel kind of like maybe he could push 80, but the Packers being the opponent does make it a little tricky, right?
No one's playing Hurts then. Like Hurts is 5-4. If he pushes 80, like it's got to come from AJ Brown and Hurts. And maybe that's how people play it. But I mean, Hurts is a high scoring quarterback, like, and he's the 2 seed.
I'm probably overselling it. What he's going to be. I
I
you're
could
probably
see
right.
Hurts being like 7-ish, but I don't think he gets like sub 5 or anything.
Right.
I don't
think it is.
I have him 9.
Or I'd be
right
afraid
now.
to project it that way, at least. Like,
because who else are you picking in the NFC to win? Like you're either playing the Lions or like if you want to do anything else on the NFC side, you're like, I want to go to the Eagles, right? Like who's going to make the run? He get 4 games. You could score 8 rushing TDs in the playoffs. You can score 2 a game for 4 games.
Yeah.
And again, I do think a lot, like if we get tomorrow, you know, Jalen Hurts cleared from the concussion protocol, I think we might start to see sentiment build versus, you know, a lot of people will just like build a lineup on a Wednesday or Thursday, you know, and lock it in or whatever. So like that does play into, I think, the ownership on the fringes here with that kind of stuff. There's a decent amount of love in the chat for kind of like one-off Packers wide receiver stuff. People referencing kind of Romeo Dobbs' big game last year. Obviously, Dontavian Wicks earns more targets without Christian Watson. Maybe a little more Tucker Kraft love. Is there a chance people try to take stabs on Packers in like a shootout loss?
I think we are on ship chasing, and we are surrounded by people who watch ship chasing. Like this, the Packers wide receivers, I think, are just it's a headache. And like I've drafted a bunch of playoff best ball teams today. Dobbs doesn't get drafted on DraftKings where like you have to get through round 1. It's 1 of 6 advanced there. And like he's an advance rate piece. He's a pretty solid advance rate piece at the very last round, 12th round. He mostly goes undrafted. Reed is cratered. Like I don't think there's just much interest in these Packers pieces. Sentiment on Packers doesn't seem super strong.
Do you think Kraft, because of tight end being so?
I had it at 3%, and chat was kind of pushing that down. So maybe I'll bring that up slightly. But
I will just caution too. There's a difference in chat when you're there's a difference in being like, I want to play that guy as a leverage piece because I love how low that percentage is, and actually predicting what the field is going to do, which is the goal of this. We'll get to Galbraithing more. Like the goal is to predict what the field is going to do.
Yeah,
but it is an interesting point. Like
Leone
Leone was talking about how boomer they've been. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know if it's easy to bring up last year's, but I know every year I'm like, sometimes I think Pat's insane when I'm looking at these, and then we get the actuals, and like DK Metcalf's like 6% or something, and I'm like, like what? like it went even further than we thought.
I know. I miss high sometimes on the ones we think are like really low. It's like I was too hot. Last year I thought 9% of the field would play Jaden Reed and 8% played him.
And we were 3% of that.
And we were 3%.
Yeah. Did not go good. He ran like 50% rounds.
Gibbs, if you remember, Gibbs had a really hot end to the fantasy season. Was like one of the guys you'd see in the finals and stuff of the best ball tournaments. But Amon-Ra was the chalk last year. Gibbs I projected for 20%, came in at 16. So it's just like shit condenses, man. Like
the Packers are a good example of that dynamic we talked about at the top of the show, where if you want to play the Packers in a high scoring loss, then like the one-off stuff definitely makes sense with some of the receivers who've shown a ceiling. But if you play them as a win or an upset, then it's like, who on this team is outscoring Josh Jacobs over 2 games? Maybe Jordan Love in like 2 shootouts, but it's probably Josh Jacobs in that scenario.
When you just said that condenses thing, and I think you're saying it right on the Packers, it makes me think AJ Brown's he's going to be the 6%, dude. It's not Hurts.
Yeah. Maybe,
but I think too, like I don't know which of these guys to take thing is like a real feeling people have, like the Mixon, Nico, the 3 Packers receivers. I think people feel pretty confident saying like, if I'm playing a Green Bay or a Philly loss, I might play AJ Brown. I think.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is I kind of like after the best ball season, I don't want to miss low on Saquon, so I did get him up to 75. Down to 8.
That's maybe too high. Maybe I'm overdoing it. I don't know.
I think 75 is probably okay. 80 might have.
80 is too high. It's nice sometimes is that part of this exercise to like push it and see like where it starts to feel shaky. And I think Saquon is one of those guys where like people are gonna find that like that frontier of like how much is too much. They'll be like right at that level. So and I think you're right. I think he was too low before.
I don't think there's going to be a ton of people that play them to lose, but I also don't know that there's going to be a ton of people that play them. Like that's why you have Hurts lower to go all the way to the Super Bowl. And you're like, well, if they make a little bit of a run, 2 games or 3 games, then it's Saquon. That's what you're telling yourself because in wins.
Also, Saquon in the Super Bowl. Like, I mean, imagine he has one of those blow-up games in the Super Bowl.
Sure.
Like,
oh, yeah. I promise you the boomers are imagining that. I promise they are envisioning.
They're salivating on it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right, so we go to the next one.
Yeah, let's move on here. I'll put these if you guys are watching after the fact or whatnot. I'll put the timestamps for all of the matchups if you guys want to toggle around to specific teams here.
All right, so we'll finish up the NFC. Right? Haven't we done? Oh no, we started Pittsburgh. Yeah,
fine,
well, whatever. We'll stay in the NFC.
We're on pace for 3.5 hours.
Yeah,
we too got to speed up.
Yeah, we'll get it. We'll get these 15-minute segments down to 10.
All right, so Bucky Irving, Mike Evans are going to be kind of co-chalk. Not a ton of fades of this game. I think in general, most people play both sides. Terry McLaurin, I think pretty big chalk. Just as like I want to play a high total game. He's sort of an obvious click. Ertz though, the secondary tight end chalk behind. I have him over Mark Andrews. Behind Kelsey.
Because you're not playing the QB there, and there's no Derrick Henry. I mean, like McLaurin's a strong play, but he's not Derrick Henry. And you're like, I mean, what other option might I have for Washington? And you're just like, yeah, well, this will all fill my tight end. I mean, everyone in the chat last night was like, Ertz is the play. It's like their first thought. Everyone came to the same first
thought.
I see this and I think, wow, Jaden Daniels at 2% is a smash. But then I think what Gretch said about the AFC side, where it's like good chance one of Lamar or Allen's getting 3 games, like pretty. And then you need Jaden to probably go 3 games, not just. I don't think he can get there in 2 if that's the case.
A lot of good quarterbacks this year, man. Because Hurts is, a third one you could say could play 3 games too, and he'd have to beat.
One thing, Brennan knows the defenses seem high. One thing I struggled with is that like my initial fade was like an extra 50% high. Like I think there's lots of teams where you're like, I don't need to play them. I think that something the field might struggle with is like, shit, I got to play Commander now. Who do I play? Oh, Terry. That's kind of what I'm thinking has happened. There's not like that many. And so therefore, I think the game environments that look enticing will catch a lot of ownership because you just don't want to play like half these teams almost.
Do you think people might play the kicker here? I'm like, hey, the total's high, but I don't want to play a guy and they're probably going to lose.
Yeah, what do I have for the
You have an 8, so it's not like you don't have it.
Maybe, yeah.
I think normally the field approaches the highest total game as like, let me have my cake and eat it too. Let me play both sides of this. Like in the same way, and we'll get to it. Like we're going to see so much Puka and Jefferson. Like you're going to see a ton of one of Bucky or Evans with McLaurin. Like people are going to want to play that as a mini correlation shootout game. I don't get burned either way. I shrug my shoulders at who's actually going to win.
Right. It's all the NFC games that people are going to want to do that on. They're not going to want to do it on any AFC games. If you want to get unique, play both sides of an AFC game and pick a winner in an NFC game.
Yep.
Yeah. I see a comment in the chat. Maybe like that Bucky and Evans could even combine for more than that. I could see them combining for more than 75.
Yeah, and so the way that would happen is people just don't fade
Yeah.
Tampa Bay, like at all. And we have seen that, like the Lions last year were 3% faded, and they had like a 10% chance to make the Super Bowl. It's like, I don't care, I'm playing them. So the Rams last year had a 5% chance to make the Super Bowl, and 5% of the field faded them. So that is a good note.
Full fade at 7%. I would probably hammer the under on that for Tampa.
Yeah, I need to decrease the fades on these guys. Yeah,
they're such a chaotic team. Even if they lose, that they're going to put up fantasy points. I mean, people want that.
Do you think people treat Washington at all like that, or is it Tampa Bay?
It's harder to pick guys on Washington. I feel like Tampa Bay is just so easy to.
It's so easy.
People.
Yeah, that's a good note that Evans and Bucky are too low.
I just said to get different, play the AFC. Pick a winner in this game, etc. But even on the teams where we play Washington to win, I do like what Tampa's like the quintessential team where in a loss they're gonna have a skill player that gets.
Yeah, Bucky and Mike got to push probably like 85% combined.
Yeah, I do think Bucky has more of it because part of it is like, well, if I'm gonna play them to win, I might as well, take the running back who projects higher. Like, what am I? I'm getting more games and I'm getting good game script in game.
I think Bucky should be like 65%. So I mean, the fact that the team we talked about it last night. I think there's like a split there.
I don't know if Bucky gets away from Big Mike too much.
No, sorry. I think he should be. I'm doing the thing that Pete just told the chat not to do. Not in the ownership projections, but like the optimal. I think he should be much higher than this.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious the way the market will play it, because when we talked about it last night, we thought it would be kind of split. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I don't want to go to a party with anyone who builds one lineup and has Chase McLaughlin in it. That's kind of just how I.
I just lowered him off of that. That was enough.
The go to the party heuristic.
All right. Yeah, I lowered their total fade down to 5, which is almost half of KC. But I feel like that feels actually correct as far as what the field's.
The chat saying Otten 0. Is Otten not going to play? I haven't been paying attention to his health.
He's like 50-50, I think. We have him projected out right now, but I think it's kind of a toss-up. He practiced some last week, so it would not be crazy if he played.
If he plays, I feel like 1% is actually low. Is that weird? he can catch a bunch of balls. He did in the playoffs last year. He was the optimal play for Tampa last year.
Yeah, but I mean, it's probably not getting higher than 3 though.
You just don't need the tight end though, because like you're just like, I'll play Kelsey, whatever. Or Ertz.
Yeah, and those like target hog games for him feel so long ago, for how people perceive Cade Otton. Like they might even in people's head be like, is he going to come back and split snaps with Payne Durham kind of thing,
Sure.
I can't see people being excited about him.
All right, so that unlocked some fade. So I'll probably end up raising like the Packers will fade a little bit, but I'll do that after the show. But yeah, so condense this more so that it's really Bucky and Evans. And people
got it all winning 92% on those two.
Yeah,
I think it's probably right.
I think it might be right, but I'd probably have them a little closer. Together.
Closer, you wouldn't have Bucky.
Closer?
I was just gonna say that Bucky 55 is
like 52.
Leone, if you want him closer, you got to adjust the ETR projection.
I did. I already did. We have Evans ahead in points per game.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
there you go.
We have them basically the same. We have them like both right around like 19 points per game.
Okay.
Yep.
Looks like you got to
How's
flip
that
him
look?
and put Evans higher because he's the boomer. And
No, we got
Aaron's
to make
rookie.
people think Bucky's going to be. You can't play
there's a
Bucky.
reason
right.
we
That's
put
right.
these guys as co-boomer chalk picks last night. It's really hard. You can make really strong cases
That's
for
right.
people going either way in their lineups. Any other thoughts on Washington? We didn't talk a ton about. There was a little shock at the Zach Ertz number. I think that's way more a product of the tight end position than it is like people loving Ertz, right?
Yeah.
It's zero
Tight end
opportunity
plus
cost.
People have to play someone on Washington. Like you said, like people want to play both sides of the high total game. And it's just
And they don't want to
get any higher.
If you're doing like 3 lineups, are you playing Kelsey on all of them, or are you playing them on like 2 of them, and the third one you're like, let's play Ertz, and then gets us off. Like I struggle with Kelsey being like 75%, 80%, like he has been in the past, because he's just not who he was in the past. He was 74% 2 years ago, but this year I don't see that.
I was just going to say, I think the recency bias of what Zach Ertz did in week 17 is probably carrying like 7 of these percentage points. Like if he had just come into that without that game, it would be way lower.
And again, we're talking about what the field's going to do. Like Zach Ertz to me strikes me as the type of play where it's like people play him. Pat was saying this last night. People play him, but they're not excited about playing him. But they play him because he fits. He fits the parameters. They want to get a Washington in. They need to get a tight end in because they decide they don't want to play Kelsey. They're not excited about Kelsey. They don't want to fade any of the other players you have to fade to play a tight end. Anywhere else you want to go tight end, you got to fade somebody meaningful. And so they're like, well, I'll just play Zach Ertz. And we're happy to be under this number, but then also Zach Ertz scores 3 touchdowns. So it's going to be fun. Like he's not a good play, but he's gonna catch more ownership than he should, is what I would say. At least I feel that way.
And then the stuff like no one's getting to the running backs on the Commanders. I just don't know how you get there.
No, Rob, that's like a little. I throw in 1%, just to kind of keep things in check a little bit, but yeah. That's
right.
where Zacchaeus
Can
is
we do
living
KC
too.
next? Because I kind of do think Kelsey could get out of control again.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So KC, the 1 seed. Let's talk the 2 1 seeds.
Yeah.
All right. So KC, I have 60 to Kelsey, 20 to Worthy, 4% Pacheco.
Worthy's not getting 20. That's a ship chasing number.
That's I think you got to go 10, shift 10 from Worthy to Kelsey.
Yeah, I was gonna say 12 for Worthy.
Okay. All right. But then you guys are gonna be telling me what a good play Worthy is at 12.
Yeah, we are.
That's
weird.
That's
All right, I'll give you 15 then. You're not getting your 12.
No, I'm like, I don't know. Kelsey might just be. People aren't going to fade KC. I think fading KC. And they're going to have such an easy run. Not easy, but
he's the obvious tight
KC is
end.
kind of interesting, but
It's what you said about Allen last night, Pat, where they're going to put a different tight end in their lineup. They're going to get through their lineup and they're going to go, I'm just going to put Kelsey in this lineup and put, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to 2v2 and
they're not going to fade them, and they're not. I mean,
it's the perfect storm, right? There is not an opportunity cost on his own team. It's a really weak position, clean path to the playoffs, history of smashing late in the playoff runs. Like, it is the perfect storm for Mega Chalk.
You don't need if you want to go to Worthy, it's so easy just to go, I'll play Ertz on Washington or something. So, and that we don't expect Washington to get faded much. So it's like, I think in order for him to be Mega Chalk, there has to be positive sentiment on Kelsey. Like, you have to feel good about putting Kelsey in your lineup. And that's the part, like, do people feel good about putting Kelsey in the lineups right now?
I think there might be an element of like Hollywood Brown's back. They've got Nuke for the playoffs. Like, I don't know which receiver to take, so I'm just going to click Kelsey.
All right.
I also think the thing that we said last night,
12.
the Kelsey did this last year. We went into this last year thinking he had such a bad second half of the regular season and he wasn't the same guy, and then he turned it on in the postseason. He's going to turn on when the lights are brightest. Taylor Swift's going to be at all the games. There's all the narratives are there. Like, he's going to be playing all the snaps. They've been taking him out and rotating in Noah Gray. It's going to be all Kelsey. And that may actually be what happens. Like, we may need to play some Kelsey.
I'm like,
we'll definitely have some Kelsey.
Like, we were joking about like how we're going to push for Worthy, but like, I imagine we're going to end up with like 50% Travis Kelsey.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
and that'll be underweight. Yeah,
I think you're right.
Like, that might be a floor on what we play. I don't know. We'll see. Mm-hmm. But like, what are you going to do?
You've got to play a Chief, and the Worthy play is not an easy one. It's not Rashee Rice last year. Rashee Rice last year was an easier click than Worthy is this year.
For sure.
And Pacheco, I think, caught some last year.
Yeah, and he was healthy.
He might have been the chalk. Let me see.
I don't think Pacheco and Hunt.
Do you guys think
they basically were co-chalk? It was 41 Kelsey, 38 Pacheco last year. Rashee 10.
You got Kareem Hunt catching 2% and Pacheco catching 2%, and I don't think you're getting Casey's running backs catching 4%.
Do I still have Hunt? Oh, yeah, Hunt should be 0.
I know this is ownership, but like, the one thing that'll be interesting to talk through is if it's worth soft fading KC at all.
Yeah, we were talking that last night.
Pete's mentioned their road though. That's one thing I struggle with, because the Baltimore people did that last year. 23% of the field faded Baltimore last year, so it's not crazy to think that they would do that, but.
And I remember we looked at some stuff and we're like, Justin Tucker can get there in 2 games. And that's what happened, is Tucker did get there in 2 games.
And the Chiefs are that team, right? Like, they play a lot of low scoring games. They slow the game down. They spread it out. Like, you can see games where Butker, hits a bunch of field goals.
But part of the thing with the Ravens was Lamar runs. There's QBs
more completions for the Chiefs. That's part of the issue. Baltimore was like, hey, if Lamar does his thing but only plays 2 games, then it might just be nobody. And
no PPRs out there. Yeah.
Does anyone play Mahomes? That's the other question. Probably people just don't play him, right?
I think 4% is probably right.
4% looks right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Some people
doesn't feel
sure.
It's not a fun
There's a lot
play.
of people saying they're going to win the Super Bowl again, and I want Patrick Mahomes in 3 games.
Okay.
Not a lot, but there's 4%. There's not 0, I think.
Butker probably catches some more than fades, more than the defense and the fade.
Yeah.
So I got
maybe Mahomes. I don't know. He can only play 3 games, and one of Allen and Lamar is kind of locked into 3. And he gets the double Super Bowl. But last year he played 4, and Allen was optimal in 2. Maybe people who in the know are like, maybe Mahomes comes in at 2. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
no, Mahomes 4. I want to put Mahomes at 2.
What about Worthy? Is Worthy too high?
No, that looks right. Okay. I mean, he finished the season real strong.
He did. That's probably
where do you guys start to freak out that we have to play Worthy? Is it right around here? That's where I think it'll.
I don't think I'm freaking out. We got to play him. I think I agree with Leone that you still have to play Kelsey 50%, even at this number. Like, I think you have to be comfortable playing some Travis Kelsey at any number.
There might be an element of like, I'm just going to win this contest elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to bring the fade up a little bit.
How big of a gap is there in your guys' projections, Leone, at tight end?
So
from
we
Kelsey to
have
everyone else?
we have Kelsey in points per game about 3 points ahead of Worthy, which isn't huge, but none of the other teams have a tight end that's the highest projected skill player.
How much is the gap
We
between
also have
Kelsey
So we have Kelsey as the top point per game guy on his team and the top tight end in points per game. So
how much over tight end 2 there?
we have him basically tied with Laporta, and
Okay.
then a couple point gap over Andrews, and then hold on, let me look at the point. And then we've got Andrews and Hawkinson like 2 points back, and then you start getting into like Kincaid.
But all of
and
that is so
Brown.
much harder. Laporta requires you to fade Gibbs and Amon-Ra, right? Andrews requires you to fade Lamar and
Right.
Henry. Hawkinson requires you to fade Justin Jefferson. Like
And then
this is
Kincaid,
just
you're
like
probably
Kelsey.
not playing because it's Allen. And then you get to like Zach Ertz and Dalton Schultz and Pat Freiermuth. And that's why I think like the Ertz and Freiermuth could maybe get. And if you look at, teammates, like, so Laporta projected same points per game as Kelsey, but he's projected, 2 points behind Gibbs, 3 points behind Amon-Ra. Whereas Kelsey's winning his team by 3 points. Like that's like a net 6 point
It's huge.
swing.
Laporta, like the shorty in the chat saying Laporta higher. I mean, you realize you gotta make a decision to not play Gibbs or Amon-Ra St. Brown on a team that you think's playing multiple games, probably.
I think you're right on that Ertz ownership, though, looking at it. Like he's kind of tied to McLaurin, and there's just nobody. I mean, I don't know. I don't think the running backs are that much of a disaster to play, but yeah, I think you're right on the Ertz ownership.
You're gonna make us play some Brian Robinson, and I'm gonna be okay with that.
No, I don't know. But that's the conversation we always have. Those like these things look good, and then you look closer, and you're like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, no one's gonna do it, so who cares?
No, that doesn't sound fun.
If Laporta's low, it's because like Monty's 0, not 1, and Jameson's 0, not 1. I think like I don't think that people are skipping Amon-Ra and Gibbs for Laporta.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
you just don't need to do it.
You think Jameson's only 1 though?
That was the one I was just going to bring up. I mean, I could see people talking themselves into a JMO spike, even in a loss kind of thing.
Gibbs might be a little high.
It depends how people
you have
feel about
several other good options.
We're not going to have clean Montgomery news.
Yeah.
So people could really talk themselves into Gibbs, be like, "Oh, Montgomery,
The Montgomery quotes today were like pretty bullish.
Yeah.
The way he was talking about it, they're like you're trying to pin him down. He's like, "Let's just say I'm excited."
I think Pat, everything we talked about yesterday with Gibbs is true. Like he's going to get played a ton, but
yeah,
there's strong alternatives that are going to allow. Like the thing that really consolidates these projected owners when there's not really an alternative, right?
But that's why I think like Jameson's, it's like, I don't know. It's like a fancy play. It's a pretty fancy play.
I'm with you.
I'll say that if these ownerships are right, we will likely end up with a lot of Amon-Ra.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a great play. He was on my list.
Now, whether that means you should change the ownerships and other people see it, that's a Pat Crane skill set. But
I would say if like Jameson is at 2 or 3, then it probably comes from Laporta and not from like Gibbs or Amon-Ra kind of thing.
Right. Those guys are going to consolidate huge. I mean, they're going to be 90 like he has it.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like Gibbs just absolutely went nuclear.
And that finish to this season is going to have people feeling real comfy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The question is how many people care that with Montgomery back, his projection for, right or wrong is going to be a little more tame.
Some of Shorty's comments here in the chat kind of point to why I think this is a fun contest. He's saying like, take down Ertz, Laporta should be higher, take down Ertz. Like, yeah, no one wants to play Ertz. Like they have to play a commander.
Yeah.
And it's like, and what do I play? Terry on every team? And Laporta's a great play. but you have to not play Amon-Ra, who's also a great play, and Gibbs, who's like good chalk. So it's that's the beauty of this contest.
Ertz is closer to one teammate on a team that's favored to lose round one than Laporta is to two teammates on a team that's favored to win.
I think you're right on Laporta. This is the thing people really struggle with in the chat and stuff, but we talked about at the very beginning of this show. The third best option on some of these teams winds up being coming in really low, right? Like the 6% DK Metcalf example. Actually, that wasn't a good one because he was like the first option on that year. But the same with Jameson. Like you moved up to 2, but I think you're right to push back on that, Pat. Like I don't think he can actually get that high. Like he has to be.
Even be charitable with a guy like Laporta. Say that his ownership is 5%, and let's say Leone ran some sims and it said efficient was 10%, like that. You would have to be playing 10 lineups to just get to one Laporta lineup in a smart way. Like that's the kind of thing that's happening. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you want to YOLO it on your 1 or 2 lineup Laporta because you like that, like sure. But I'm just saying those situations play out writ large, which is what keeps this down in a big way.
And you have to go farther on Jameson. Like the chat, like Steph was saying, maybe people play Jameson over Laporta. I think Pat's got it right because I think the reason you do get to Laporta on your 10th team, like Pete was saying, is the tight end question, right? Jameson, you got to be like, well, I'm fading those guys, and it's not even really helping. It's just like I'm putting him in at flex, It's not helping my lineup constraints, my positional constraints. That's going to be a hard click. Jameson Williams is going to be a really hard click.
He's a really hard click. He's the 4th best play on his team in tight end premium. You're running the 4th best play on the 1 seed. It's like, what if I just
to like get into the psychology of it a little more? Like it's really easy on every single team to be like, oh man, that really stands out. But when you're going to build a lineup, you're only going to end up pulling, hopefully, a couple of these levers, and the smartest levers are going to be against like bracket or game level stuff that people are uncomfortable with, to the point where you could get a really high usage guy like Joe Mixon, that no one wants to touch because of like the game flow. Whereas like the opportunity cost of pulling that lever on one of the Super Bowl favorites with like 3 other loaded options, like that's a really scary click to make on one of your lineups.
But also to Leone's point, I want to circle back to it because people are so concerned about Laporta and Jameson. Amon-Ra is sitting there at 26, and Leone's right. If Pat, if you're right about this, like he's the play, right? I mean,
he's a smash. Amon-Ra's a smash at that point. I mean, that's the guy who jumps out to me as too low as Amon-Ra, which I mean, like maybe means I'm projecting him too low.
But then you got to take it from Laporta.
At worst, Amon-Ra and Gibbs should be like a coin flip. Or arguably, Amon-Ra should be favored over Gibbs. But that's subjective for sure.
I do think
that'll be closer. I don't know.
It is. I do wonder, man. Like, how much are people going to put their heads in the sand about the Montgomery stuff? Because I mean, to your point, Leone, like the projection differences in games with Montgomery are pretty meaningful, especially to the ceiling, right?
Yeah, it's super meaningful. I mean, Gibbs is like the RB1, without Montgomery, and then with Montgomery, we talked about in DFS as a GPP play every week, because no one was, he was never that highly owned. It was just hard to ever get him highly owned, and he wasn't priced insanely high. He was priced somewhat expensive, but not crazy. Yeah. But I think in people's minds, I think they've just they've gone to Gibbs. There's no turning back. I think we're projecting like Montgomery at 85%, what his normal role has been.
That's higher than I was even doing in my mind, because I was thinking, that he might
maybe we could be off, but like if you say 75% of his normal role, then you're at a point where you're talking probably like Gibbs and Amon-Ra are projected the same. If you say 75% Montgomery.
And that is like
that's 3 for 3 on like Amon-Ra.
You also don't need the running back. You have Henry, you have Saquon, you have Cook. If you play Lamar, you have Cook. So
I can't disagree with this enough. Montgomery will be a non-factor. Gibbs cheerleader. That
even if he plays at 4, 50% of his normal role, it could come in limiting his touchdowns. Gibbs had 4 TDs in week 18. It could be a situation where Montgomery's stealing TD equity, which would be huge.
We've seen Montgomery play through Q tags, come off injuries, and Dan Campbell puts the goddamn ball in that guy's belly. He does it at the goal line. Like, if David Montgomery is active, he is fucking playing. Like, you are so wrong if you think he's sitting on the sideline because Gibbs blew up with him out. Gibbs blew up with him out last year.
I love this binking guy in the chat. Just seem to just show up. Yo, Barkley and Henry are musts for me.
Yeah.
I love it. That's both are
let's keep moving since we spent a while on the bye week teams.
I think so. I'm starting to break here. I'm moving Gibbs down slight. I think. Let's see.
Dude, like that looks fairly. I mean, that looks fairly good to me.
Yeah.
I think you're covered too on being like you could be wrong 10 points either way, but the other way, I think there was like only one way you could be.
There's only one way I'm wrong. Yeah. All right. Let's go to.
Should we finish off the NFC?
What did we do? We did we need to do Minnesota
and the Rams.
Yeah. This one will actually be
voice of the
easy.
boomer opto.
All right. So this is like sorted kind of weird, but Puka's down here 60%. Kyron at 18. And I don't know why it's doing that. And Jefferson, big chalk on. I mean, this one's easy.
Yes. They're at least with the Rams, like this seems like very solid to me. I can't really imagine people getting to any non-Kyron or Puka unless I'm just missing something about the boomers having nostalgia for Cooper Kupp.
I feel like Kyron's high. Puka at 60. I mean, he had like 1,000 yards in like 11 games. He went insane. Was that crazy?
Yeah. I do think, I mean, Corum got hurt, right? Like it's going to be like 100% Kyron. So I get it, but yeah, I feel like if I'm hand building, I'm like, I'm just going to play 100% Puka Nacua and just, if I lose here.
He gets so many targets. He's their whole team.
And they're like, he's the higher projected guy. So like he's better in multiple games, but then you also would want the receiver in a loss. So
yeah.
They're minus 105 money line, and the Vikings are minus 115. It's a 1.5 point spread, but the money line is basically telling you this is a
I don't know if this is, and again, I don't know if this is just me, what I would do versus what the field's going to
do. I think, just in the drafts today, Puka is really high. Like he's coveted in these best ball drafts. I mean, he's going like near Jefferson at this point. So,
and there's no
better play than Jefferson, quite frankly.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. And not only is he like a better play, has been producing better, but the options pulling away from him are not near as strong, I think, as, I find like Addison to be a more compelling dart throw than Cooper Kupp,
I agree with that. Addison's outscored Jefferson in many games.
You also have Hop, who can rack up catches.
What's that?
You also have Hawkinson, who can rack up catches in tight end premium.
Puka's the ultimate comfy click. He's the guy that I think we talked about it with Debo in previous years. You feel good about his role in a loss. You feel good about him being a huge part of a smash game. There's nothing uncomfy about Puka. You don't feel any opportunity cost.
So one question, Pat, in terms of like teammate differential, we have Aaron Jones, Jefferson gap the same as Kyron Puka. Do you think
the Aaron Jones stuff with like his availability last week, and then like Cam Akers getting that run, I think there's like a fairly significant like a mental tier that people have these guys in.
It might be legitimate too. We might be like over projecting him.
Like Kyron is like a locked in running back one all season. Jones is kind of like that
1% for Cam Akers and get Aaron Jones to 3% pretty easily.
That's true.
But you're right. Kyron's like, we know he's getting 100% of the touches. Like there is absolutely no doubt whatsoever.
And if I'm coming off Jefferson, or Puka, it better to be to someone who's like getting work.
Yeah. I think
It might be that Addison's a little high for what the market does, and that maybe like Addison, Hawkinson, and Jones should all be 5. I don't know. I had a lean toward Jones last night too in my first read, and then you guys were telling me the hell stuff was scary. I had a similar reaction to Leone last night.
Yeah, I think we might be over projecting him, right? I do think he catches more passes than Kyron, so that's part of the reason we have it closer, even with like a worse role. I think like don't you? I mean, I kind of would think Hawkinson would be played more than Addison just with the tight end premium stuff, but
People like
Hawk
Addison
just
now.
hasn't like. Hawk has felt like more like Freiermuth than he has a guy that can spike and carry the day for you. I feel like.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. I mean, my read on Addison is I was just about to say it, but like first round pick, year 2 guy, scored 9 touchdowns, scored 10 touchdowns as a freshman. This guy's like a superstar. Like Jordan Addison's like one of the top 20 best receivers in the NFL, and we're just like not talking about it.
He's
like
great.
he can score. It's like Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, but no one treats him that way. So
yeah, I love like Addison in a loss scenarios for Vikings is just for our own stuff.
Yeah, I kind of like it too because I think he's got the air yards. He can hit for big plays. The one thing when we went to this, my first thought was the fades. And Pat, maybe you can correct me on it, and maybe this is like pretty logical for them. But somebody in the chat pretty quickly said that they felt more comfortable playing both sides of this than Washington, Tampa, because it has superstars and because of the close spread relative to the high over under. I kind of feel like people are going to try to jam both sides of this even more than because the Commanders are tough to play. Yeah. Maybe people just play the Commanders kicker, and it's like a mistake the field makes, even though there is a really high total in that game.
Yeah, I mean, so that is like a big question because. Okay, so actually, I'm looking here. Let's see. No, the live line for Tampa Bay is still -3, and it's Vikings -2.5. No, then it went down to -1.5. Okay, but they're still favored. So the Vikings are favored. The Commanders are getting 3. Yeah, people probably just pick the Bucs more than I have it. And then they just don't fade either side of this game.
The AFC fade, dude, the Steelers Broncos fades are going to be that's kind of what I meant with like the bracket being different, I guess. It's like we have 3 games in the NFC that everybody wants to play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I need to bring down these
2 huge spreads in the AFC.
I think the total fades on Broncos. I agree with you. And Broncos and Steelers are going to be up there with the years when we had the backup QBs. I mean, they're going to be absurd.
So I brought them up as we've been going. I've opened up some fades, and I've sent some of them to those guys. The Steelers are at 89, Denver's at 85, and now Pittsburgh was 95 last year, which maybe they're 95 faded again or close to that, but.
It's so hard to project that. What do you have for the Washington and Tampa fades?
I had 94 last year as a projection.
Oh, nice.
Wow. Look at this guy.
Look at this guy. Washington and Tampa, what do you have right now for them for fades?
So Washington, I only have 29 faded, and that's too low. I need to get that up into the 30s or even low 40s maybe. So yeah, so that would also
20
first.
I'm telling you,
20
for
the
Washington
Rams,
kicker, man, double digits.
22 for the Vikings. You're not.
I have 20 for the Rams and 22 for the Vikings, but Vikings is probably in the teens, and Rams is probably in the teens. So that's going to unlock like maybe 6 from each, so 12 more to the Commanders.
Leone, you just said Washington kicker double digits.
Yeah.
I think that's right. He's going to be the chalk kicker, dude. People are going to just play the kicker in that game.
Are they no, they're not the biggest underdog. I guess Green Bay's the biggest underdog on the NFC side, but they're the second biggest underdog. And if they win, they would have to play Detroit most likely. And it's a high total, but the skill players aren't as juicy as LA, Minnesota, or Tampa Bay.
Wait, so who's the chalk kicker, you think?
I don't know if he's a chalk kicker, but I was saying double digits on Seibert.
Somebody in the chat said he's not even their kicker anymore, or maybe
that's a problem.
A different team. I think it was Washington. I think it was Neil Farley in the chat earlier was like,
we might
don't
have
even
to
have the right
adjust that
kicker.
ownership. Let's Google one.
That's a real problem.
Zane Gonzalez.
Oh, he's on injured reserve.
Yeah,
Zane
Zane
Gonzalez
Gonzalez
way
is
too
the
high.
kicker.
Dude, so now, not even kidding though, I feel like that probably keeps the ownership down. People don't like these quick kicker swaps.
So it's Zane Gonzalez.
I think
Dude.
Zane Gonzalez has been kicking for him for like several weeks.
Several weeks.
Dude, you know what the sad part is?
6 games he's kicked for them.
I wanted to avoid this exact situation, so before I put the kickers in, I googled like Commanders kicker and like just like double checked all the kickers and or first checked them in some cases, to be honest. And yeah, somehow that slipped. I didn't notice.
You want to hear something
Kicking for them
hilarious?
since week 12.
I googled news this, and the second article
Oh, no.
is called "Jealousy May Have Cost Commanders Loss to Cowboys." Did kicker Austin Seibert rush back from his injury too soon for the Washington Commanders out of fear he was losing his job? So I mean,
Uh-oh.
He got reared.
Uh-oh.
oh man. All right. Anything else here? Can we move on to the next?
AFC. We've done it. We've done enough.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I'm lowering I'm doing a little adjustment. Yeah, let's go to the AFC. Where do you want to go?
We could
gotta
do
do-
Broncos Bills.
Yep.
We'll get Leone's boots on the ground take here, get inside a
Good.
Buffalo Bills boomer mindset.
So I have Allen as the clear chalk over Lamar because you like. Would you rather play Cook or Henry? Most people are going to want to play Henry. Mark Andrews will be played more than Kincaid, so it's just like natural that you then go to Allen, who's also going to be home against Lamar when they likely play each other in round 2. So I feel pretty good about this, but obviously curious for what you guys think there. And then Sutton and a bunch of nothing over on Denver.
I think that looks pretty good on the bill. My initial instinct was that's high on James Cook, but there's just literally nobody else to play, and it's hard for Allen to get any higher than you have him. So that's probably right. I could see maybe people taking more shots on the wide receivers, but I don't know if it would get to
Pat, could you
meaningful
scroll
amount.
up just a little bit?
Yep.
Shakir, I think maybe Shakir should be like 4%.
I know we need to get through this, but I got to shout out Chris Diaz for the kicker chasing reference. Ryan suck up in the X's. Was that Ryan suck up?
I think it was.
Oh,
Yeah.
Shakir up. Shakir
we just
up.
did that. We just did that.
You're
exact
up and
moment.
who down? Kincaid and Cook or Cook?
Probably
Maybe a touch of both.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm with Leone. I think Shakir's going to get played some.
Do you really? I mean, I know that Jefferson and Addison are sick, but I feel it feels weird to me to have Kincaid higher than Hawk. But maybe it's just my personal vibes thing.
I agree with that too. I don't think anyone wants to play Kincaid at all. I was on Kincaid. I don't want to play him. The
I'd
people who
maybe
didn't
tie
play him
them.
certainly. Like
As
Pat,
long as
you're
that
not
gives you
playing
enough
him.
tight end stuff.
Liam told us last night he's not even playing him because he has to play
Wow.
Allen in all his teams. Like the Bills homers aren't even playing him. Who the fuck's
The
playing
Bills homers aren't
Kincaid?
playing him. All right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Yeah.
No one, even the people who like Kincaid can't talk themselves into Kincaid. I mean, we're screwed.
I mean, honestly, it just means it's going to Cook, though, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Cook is so clearly the second play in a big way. When like we were talking about Amon-Ra, then compared to Laporta and JMO. Like James Cook compared to Kincaid and Shakir is an even bigger gap than those kind of second to thirds.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, and then Fades and Sutton, I think, is basically on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's,
I mean,
you don't even have Mims on the chart, and I think that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I didn't even include him. It's disrespectful, but
What,
I stand by it.
Nobody's
think-
going to play Javonte Williams, and I'm going to
Leone, is there going to be any? I mean, it's so cold on the East Coast. You think there's going to be people who are not going to want to play kickers with a low team total as massive dogs out in the Buffalo weather?
Yeah, I think we've seen in the past, right, that sometimes the field does not spread out the soft fades that much.
That's right.
Like we've seen some really heavy stances. We mentioned
I
that
have not
Miami
been good-
DST year, like Miami DST and their kicker were like a combined like 3% maybe.
I would
mean, it was
bet the
crazy.
house on what Leone's saying, the under 20% kicker and D for Denver. Their hard fade is going to be higher than 65.
Okay.
Because
I'm gonna
people
make a note
still
to
want
do
to
that.
believe that their kicker and D can be optimal in 2 games. They're just going to say the Broncos can't win. I'm not putting a single Bronco in my team. It's not
I
even
probably
like
have
a soft
Steelers
fade,
then too high as well.
potentially. But especially the Broncos, dude. No one believes in Bo Nix. No one's believed in this team all year. I've made a killing at stealing lines betting on them all year because no one wants to fucking play this team. They think the Broncos suck. It's been great.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, the fade might also just be higher, period, on this team.
Yep.
That's one thing. That's where people probably just play more Vikings, Rams.
I think Denver DST is going to be a pretty good play. Like even in a loss, we know that they could put up a score. That's the highest of the soft fades.
Yeah.
And the fades.
All right. Where to next? LA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do Chargers and Texans here. This one's more fun because I think there's lots of different ways this can go.
All right. So this is one of those things where I feel like people probably will want to fade this a little bit more, but it's like you kind of run out of teams to fade. So it creates a situation where McConkey, I think, will be pretty big chalk. And he is going, like, in the playoff best ball stuff, he's moving up.
Yeah.
So that made me feel like, and then I may have I may have this gap too close. I think Nico's probably higher than Mixon by more than this margin.
The Chargers are kind of like Rams light, and Ladd is Puka and Dobbins is Kyron.
I feel like people are going to view Mixon similar to Jacobs, and you had Jacobs pretty high. Is it just that Nico's so?
But there's no
clearly number
Nico
one?
on the Packers.
Yeah, again the Houston vibes too are just so bad. Maybe that's just Levitan in my ear each week.
No, you're right. I think
No, they are bad. The vibes are bad on Houston. That's another one where like I was in on this and I don't want to play him. I think that's a meaningful thing. Like that's what happened to Kyle Pitts. The people who were out were like, I don't want any action on him, and the people that were in were like, I don't want any action on him, and then no one fucking wants to draft him the next year, right? Or play him.
Do you think Schultz gets off 0 at all, or no?
I mean, maybe to 1, but like,
I don't think he's like the craziest play, but
we've seen him do it before in a loss, although his role has been way less than it has been in years past too.
Right.
Yeah, it's not as good. It's one. I want to go higher than 1. I just think I might put it at 1.
yeah.
It's a good point because there's no other receivers. They've all gotten hurt. But I just feel like Nico or Mixon are a fade.
I like, Pat, how you kind of have this spread out because I do really think it's going to be a kind of choose your own adventure across the way. This like almost 20% split across 5 guys, including the fade and the soft fades.
Yeah, and the soft fade's probably getting played higher here than in Pittsburgh and Denver.
Well, Pete, you identified this as the soft fade bowl where people fade both sides of this game.
Yep.
With soft fades, and I think that we will see some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
especially in Houston. I just think people aren't going to want to play Houston. I'm probably gonna. That's one of the things I'm going to try and do is get the Rams fade down, the Vikings fade down, and the Commanders and Texans fades up a bit. Honestly, I feel like the Commanders will get faded significantly less than the Texans, where it's way more fun to play both sides of that game.
It's just harder to pick a player on the Commanders.
I think people want to play the
Right.
Chargers to win multiple
They do.
games.
People want to play. There's going to be edge in, just cclosing your eyes and playing some Nico and some Mixon for sure. Because
People want to
if they play 2 games.
Chiefs.
This is why I told you guys before the show that I had to spend 2 to 3 minutes tilting that last year we were overweight Houston skill players and their DST and kicker were the best plays in 2 games. I'm going to say it this year. They're going to win, and Nico or Mixon will be.
It won't be their DST or kicker this time.
Yeah, it's not going to be a soft fade in 2 games this time.
This game 2 years ago when the Chargers were in the playoffs, I think this was probably instructive. The Chargers were, I think slight favorites in that game. I projected 18% of the field to fade the Chargers and 19% of the field to fade the Jaguars, who they were playing. 6% of the field faded the Chargers, and 39% of the field played the Jaguars. And this feels kind of similar, where I think people are just going to be like, Chargers win, Texans lose. And probably overconfidently, right?
Yes.
Steph's asking about Dobbins feeling high. He's one that I've had a really hard time with. When I tried to do a little run through the Boomer Opto I mentioned yesterday. I actually threw Dobbins in at first. So I was thinking people might think the Chargers might have a little run. He's clearly their lead back. And yet I kind of feel like I understand what she's saying. You guys have made it totally great case that it's going to be McConkey. I don't think he's going to be their chalk piece anymore or anything. It's going to be McConkey, but I mean, are people going to tell themselves that the running back is good in multiple games, or in Harbaugh, this is the way they'll win in the playoffs kind of a way, or is it just too high?
I could see Dobbins coming up a little bit.
I like the Dobbins percentage.
Well, I brought him down, so I had it at 10 and 55.
I liked it at 10, but
okay.
Seems right.
This is the Cam Akers I wouldn't have brought Dobbins
years ago. Cam Akers was 10% that year, I want to say. Like, this is the Akers play. He's the
Dobbins might be the Akers play.
Wow. Yeah, I think Jacobs might be the Akers play.
But Jacobs is 50% owned.
Yeah,
he's too high. Yeah, he's not the play.
Is he? Because I think the Akers, my initial.
Well, you're the one making the ownership projections.
Well,
you tell us.
You saying this Pat Gray guy doesn't know what he's doing?
Well, but when with the Akers thing, I remember lowering him in the ownership. I'm like,
and not
people
enough.
Are gonna play Akers. People are gonna play Akers, and then lowering him and be like, we gotta jam this guy.
That's true, because I think we even projected Akers at like 25%.
Yeah.
And we were like, this is a smash. And had we projected him at 10%, we would have. And he
wasn't Cup.
That's right.
Shoved if we.
Yeah.
But there was Cup on that team, right? That was popular.
No, people were injured. I don't think Cup was on the team.
Was there anyone?
I'm pulling it up.
I think there were some shitty wide receivers.
Okay.
I think
he was
It was like all fades.
Okay.
There were some crappy receivers I remember playing. Maybe Robert Woods was on the team. I don't know.
I think it was pre the Cup breakout.
Yeah.
So okay, here it is. So I had Akers projected for 39%, came in at 11%.
What?
You did a terrible job, Pat. What are you doing?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
And we liked him at 39% was like the crazy thing. So maybe you're right. Maybe the Akers play is Jacobs.
Yeah. I mean, it's like chalk that doesn't materialize on a live dog that runs their offense through a running back. Like, to me, it's the Jacobs.
And people just end up fading them.
This is when Jacobs was like really good too. I mean, this is rookie year. Maybe Bucky Irving
looked good. Dude,
Bucky Irving's the Jacobs play. Here's the Akers
play.
Not even close.
Bucky's not. It's not.
No,
not on
coming in 11.
Akers fell awful.
Guys, Bucky might come in at 3. We better play him in every single lineup.
This is called insider trading.
I sent you guys this stuff ahead of time, but it's kind of crazy. The Bucs had the highest NFC team total in round 1, and the matchups that they could potentially play the rest of the way, like, all are probably going to have decent totals. The AFC is where you could get some potentially gross total games. There's like very unlikely to be any dome games after Houston LAC in round 1. It's outdoor cold stuff. In the NFC, you've got Minnesota Dome, you've got Rams Dome, you've got Detroit Dome, obviously, as the 1 seed. You've got Tampa Bay and not, the Northeast. So, the scoring environments are just good better in the NFC.
For sure.
Yeah.
The chat's not liking 55% McConkey. There's several in a row.
Tell me where to put it, chat.
No.
You got it.
No, they're saying they don't want to play it again. I think it's a really good chip projection. Yeah, you can say that that's too high, and I think I agree. I think Dobbins should come up and some other ways to play it, but I think the field's going to feel very comfortable with Ladd.
I would say maybe more soft fade, but you already have it at 25% soft fade. So
I'm going to take it down because I think that people play the Chargers to win this game.
I don't think I think Pete's point's right. That's what they're saying. But I was saying the sentiment is that's too high. Makes me think it's maybe a nudge too high. I don't think you can push that much more to McConkey. I mean, I don't know. I guess
you could push more to Dobbins, I think. But maybe
a little more to Dobbins. He could be at 14 or something. And
55 is a lot, man. You had like Jefferson at 60. That's.
Yeah, I wouldn't go higher on McConkey.
I don't plan to go higher, but I do think probably people play the Chargers to win this game more than I currently have it.
Well, the other thing is too, I think
his Mixon the Akers play.
Yeah, Mixon's the Akers play.
Well,
dude, Mixon kind of is the Akers play.
He's totally the Akers play.
Oh no.
He's way more in that. But I was gonna say the other reason on McConkey is because people again kind of feel like they can middle it, where it's like, oh, if the Chargers go on the road to the Chiefs and they're behind and they're having to trail a lot, maybe Dobbins gets scripted out, but like Ladd's going to be a focal point of basically any game script for the Chargers. And I think that gives it a coziness that keeps him pretty high.
Yeah, I think the thing about Ladd is that like, I think a lot of people are just going to be like, well, Ladd fits, and they're not. The ownership doesn't show up next to the guy. You can lie to yourself when you build this. They won't be that chalky.
What percent of the field is even considering ownership?
Right.
Maybe not considering, but like considering past like a very surface level.
Or doing it correctly. Because like a lot of, like Pat was just saying, they're like, yeah, no one's going to play Ladd McConkey, and then everyone plays Ladd McConkey.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to play some Ladd McConkey, guys.
It's obviously, yeah.
So,
and I don't think, if anything, I know there's a little bit of enthusiasm for QJ coming off of another big game. Obviously, Gus is a 0. They just signed Zeke.
QJ 13 catches, 186 yards.
Yeah.
You guys think people actually talk themselves into that a little bit?
Are you?
Week 18 surprised the fuck out of me.
I mean,
there was multiple QJ comments in here. Yeah,
3%, 4%. That's higher than we have, like Jameson Williams and some other secondary receivers. So that seems about right. I don't think we could get too much higher than that.
No Gibbs. I mean, Gibbs versus Dobbins, Amon-Ra versus McConkey.
Yeah,
just that.
True.
Laporta versus Disley. Like QJ might just be a product of like, I want to play somebody on the Chargers, and he could score touchdowns.
Yeah, I think people probably go to Dobbins more. It's like easier to imagine him just like scoring touchdowns and stuff.
That was my initial boomer chalky take.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Yep. What else do we got?
I think that's it.
We did
it. Is that it? Oh wow.
Yep.
You could show the tops of like a couple positions, maybe.
Yeah, maybe you could just include everything by and sort.
Yeah.
By,
so here's where the fades are. Now this is short, a couple percentage points as I re-dole out some stuff. But you see, I got Tampa Bay way low, Kansas City higher. The 1 seed, but it's like, well, maybe they lose round 2, and I don't want to pick Kelsey on this team. I'm gonna bring Minnesota down. I'm gonna bring the Rams down. Some that'll go to Washington. Some will go to Green Bay. But yeah, this is where things currently stand. And then let me sort.
What do you guys think? Sutton's higher owned than Pickens?
I think it's more about like what team people fade. And then I think like Frymouth maybe catches 1 or 2, and there's no one else on Denver. So I think
shouldn't Denver be higher total fade than Pitt? That's what you're saying, right, Mike?
I was just curious. I guess we have Sutton projected higher than Pickens. So like if people are thinking along the same lines, what we have maybe is right then.
I think with put Denver higher.
Yeah, you might. I mean, I did it based on the line, which it's like a point. It's different. Ravens are 9.5, Bills are 8.5, but
and the finishing form for Sutton and Pickens just couldn't be any further apart too.
That's true.
About those.
Yeah,
good point. What do you have as the top? Show the top of the tight end position.
I need to scroll over. Tight end. Okay,
that's the main one. I'm really curious about. It's Kelsey, and then we have it's Kelsey. Okay.
What's the total here?
The total is 122%, which is like 3% higher than last year. So basically the same as last year,
but meaningfully lower than the previous years. We're all
previously it was 155 in 2022, 185 in 2021, and then 152 in 2020.
Makes sense. I think that's good.
Yep.
How do you have QB?
Man, look how weak this tight end.
This is the weakest tight end we've, I think, ever had.
It's honestly probably still a little too high. I'm going to go steal percentages from people.
I was thinking maybe more like 115 on the
tight end stuff. I think you're right. I
but
just need to figure out who it comes from.
Yeah, because individually they all look pretty good.
Right.
122, way too high. 105%. Like you just read that 3 of the 4 last years have been over 150. Like there's 4 flexes in this contest.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking 115 as really low. Like
plus,
really push it.
People, when we went through, people are like, "Ooh, little Frymouth 2." Like you asked about Schultz,
it comes down to the Kelsey stuff. I think kind of like. If Kelsey's 72, it's probably what you have is probably right.
But I'll take the Disley one away and stuff.
Yeah.
No one's playing Kincaid. Yeah, well, Kincaid's at 2. I mean,
yeah, you got him right.
No, Kincaid, you got to keep Kincaid at 2.
No, Brett, you've got low enough. I missed this in the chat. How is Kincaid not higher? Because no one is playing Kincaid.
Brett, I tried to help Brett earlier. He came in like halfway and doesn't understand the contest. I honestly watched the show yesterday. Watched from the top of the show. We talked about a lot of these dynamics, and we did some examples too of like why it's really hard to get to higher ownership projections on some of these fringe guys. It'll make sense, I promise.
Yeah, you look at them in a vacuum, and they all seem way too low. And then you start doing the exercise that Pat's doing, and it's like, oh.
That's why this is the whole show we do once, during the week. It's such an important way of thinking through it.
Yeah.
And your work here is so awesome.
My God. Yeah. I mean, this is
82% Lamar and Allen, and it could be light as to what it should be.
It could be light.
Should not as an ownership projection wise.
I mean, people do tend to Galbrain stuff a little bit at quarterback. Like, I know Goff and Herbert look like I'm not playing any of that, but like there usually is some people who play like the off the beaten paths quarterback. So last year, Stafford was 1% owned, Flacco was 2% owned, Stroud 1%, Purdy 5%, Dak 8%. I projected Dak 2, he came in 8. I projected Purdy 2, he came in 5. Projected Flacco 0 came in 2, Stafford 0 came in 1, Stroud 0 came in 1. So that's like one thing I want to take these guys to 0, but I don't think they come in at 0.
Oh, I think what you have is probably about right.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about the Hurts thing. Hurts, if depending on the news, maybe be more like 6-ish, but
based on what you just read, Baker's going to have 1. Like he's the 0 that'll have 1.
Yeah, Baker's probably going to have 1. Darnold's probably going to have 1.
He might have 1. Yep.
The rest are probably good at 0.
Yeah, those are good calls.
See a few people who play golf. I definitely.
I'm sort of interested to see some sim stuff with like Detroit goes to Super Bowl, like if it has Goff. He's had those spread out big TD games.
Let's see. Yeah, it's just going to be really hard for people to get to other quarterbacks. And then the third quarterback hasn't even cleared the concussion protocol yet. The fourth hasn't shown a ceiling all year. I mean, it gets thin so quickly.
Yeah. I do wonder. I mean, I Daniels looks fun. Obviously, Hurts looks fun because they're mobile. Even more than Mahomes, I'm like, is Herbert a play? We were just talking about how like the Chargers are hard to play. Like, what if they go on a run?
I think you want McConkey. I mean,
I could see Herbert in 3 games, right? Where it's like you get the Dobbins game, you get the QJ game, you get the Ladd game kind of thing.
Right. The really hard part that I keep coming back to is what Gretch said. It's just highly probable one of Lamar or Allen gets 3 games.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's definitely ways like I could see it more with like if Lamar's the one that gets 3 games and Derrick Henry's smashing, Herbert can definitely beat Lamar for sure. With Allen, it's a little tougher to see if you get 3 Allen games.
Yeah, Herbert, I think you got to play him all the way to the Super Bowl and say that he threw 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl and he gets the double points. I mean, that's the only way it really works. And even still, it might be Allen or Lamar because it'll be one of his teammates catching those TDs. Like Bat was like, then it's McConkey. Like it might be. I think you're right, Leone. It's. I mean, the way that Buffalo and Baltimore match up in the second round, you got to feel like it's.
Yeah, I definitely want to see how that sims out because like Jaden, we have Jaden. I mean, Jaden at 2% to me is the one that's like, whew, but God, yeah, then you got to play him into.
You need the Ravens to beat the Bills, and then lose to the Chiefs, and then have it be Henry. Your Henry Daniels beats their flex plus Lamar.
Yeah,
and Allen only plays 2 games.
Certainly plausible. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Washington's got
the Baltimore. Yeah, if you're going contrarian at quarterback, you want Baltimore over Buffalo. There's way more options.
Yes. Yeah, you want to fade Buffalo, and play it through Henry, and then you can go. I mean, frankly, you probably want to do your Hurts teams like that too, but definitely like your Daniels.
Daniels, I think you also might want to be thinking about Packers beating the Eagles because then they get to go to the winner of the Rams, Vikings, and the Packers go to Lions. It helps the Commanders' path quite a bit.
I like that a lot. I mean, Daniels is fun. Daniels might be a touch light because he is pretty fun.
Yeah, and his teammates aren't like super, like it's not super condensed, so he's got that separation aspect from his teammates.
Right. Yeah, I might race him to like 4, right? I mean, he's a fun play.
Yeah, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback in ADP next year. Like people know he's good at fantasy.
Yeah. I stole it from Allen.
Yeah, I think the 2 that stand out to me are like the Jaden Baker and just like whoever wins that. Those quarterbacks, if they snap off a second and get 3 games, I could see either of those quarterbacks being in play.
Because Baker can spread it around like nobody's
for business. Sure. Someone who's tilted Devin Culp catches, I can attest to that.
Go to running back and receiver real quick.
Well, one thing just to note because there's some Lamar love in the chat, which I totally get, but I do feel pretty good about this. Last year, I projected Lamar 55, Allen 33. It was Lamar 41, Allen 34, and that's Ravens 1 seed with Lamar winning MVP. So, I think and the natural break is going to go towards Allen.
Sure.
All right, let me get a running back. That's without Henry too, by the way, and Andrews was hurt. Kind of wild. All right, Barkley, I've been slowly raising as we make adjustments. It's up to 77 now. Gibbs, Henry, Jacobs probably comes down a little. I think I'm going to fade the Packers a bit more.
Bucky looks way too high to me. But keep him there for the sheets. It's like
Yeah, this looks good to me. Jacobs seems just juxtaposed here across the other ones like a smidge high, but
yeah, he is for sure.
Kyron's the other potential Lakers play. I mean, Kyron and Mixon in the teens are.
Yeah, but Kyron's got. I mean, Mixon's got Nico, but we've talked about the Puka thing. Like that's
Kyron in a loss is like almost what you need it to be, and Kyron games are hard in a loss.
Yeah, it's true. You basically need like a Puka injury. It feels like he gets banged up somehow. What do you got at receiver?
You guys called this last night. I think I had Jefferson over Puka, and you were like, no, it's Puka. And so, Puka's the chalk now.
It's wild to see Ladd and McLaurin next, but I mean, it makes sense.
Yep.
This gets to being a running back season, man. There's no Jamar Chase.
Sutton does feel a little high here. Pickens now down below 10%.
AJ Brown below 10. We moved him down.
Yeah. Yeah, McLaurin goes down a little. I'm going to fade Washington more than I have it now, so McLaurin will come down. Not a ton, but definitely a little bit.
If Lions were playing this week and we got the David Montgomery active news or full practice stuff, I would start like boosting up Amon-Ra, bringing down Gibbs a little bit. But I think there's going to be a lag to the reaction to that with it just out of sight, out of mind on the bye.
Yeah.
Dude, is it just
he does stand out there though, right?
Are these receivers a little shakier than we've had in past years once you get past Puka?
For sure. We used to have loaded, Devontae Adams was always a fixture in here.
I guess if you pre-filled like Adams, Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb. I mean,
Last year we had CD 87.
We've had Jamar Chases,
Tyreek 50, Evans 43.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill. I mean, with the Dolphins even, but especially back with KC. Well, I guess they had Kelsey back then, but
yeah, it falls off. Yeah, AJ Brown definitely looks nice when you stare at all this.
How do your soft fades land here, real quick before we?
Let's see, kicker and
kicker.
Yeah, kicker. I tried to stay flatter this year because if there's one like leak in my game here, I'd say I haven't nailed the soft fades. Like I've been very good with the overall fades, but identifying how it breaks out between hard fade, kicker, and defense has been kind of shaky. So I'm just
probably pretty random. I mean, it feels like
random.
the thing that the market is actually deciding at the very end by just clicking buttons.
Random, but like oddly concentrated randomness. Like everyone seems to somehow end up the same way.
Right. I need to like listen to more stuff on that. Like, this is like I need to get the sentiment of the crowd
Honestly,
a little bit more.
Go ahead.
Is it maybe the 1 year stuck in my head though? Like, do you have the actuals last year on kicker and
yeah?
Was it?
No, I was pretty wrong last year on it. Let me see. No, I wasn't that wrong. But Jake Elliott was the chalk kicker, 28%. I had 25. Kaimi Fairbairn was 24. I had 19. Houston, 18. Was the chalk D. I had 20. Here's where I was wrong. So I thought Cleveland would be really chalky on defense, and they were only 13%. I had them at 32. But it was part of because I thought people would actually fade Cleveland, who lost, and they didn't. They did not fade them at all. So that was just kind of a bigger miss. I had them 36% faded, and they were 18%. So people just didn't fade them. Was part of it. So I think sometimes maybe that's been it. I thought people would fade a team and they don't, and then they soft fade them. That was a unique.
That was a storyline where Flacco had gone to Houston and had that monster game, and both Amari and Njoku went off in week 16 or 17 or whatever, and then he was going back to Houston. And everyone was like, "This was a shootout 3 weeks ago." Like, there's always these weird little independent narratives, but that's why no one faded Cleveland. They wanted to play both sides of that game bad.
That's a good point. 2 years ago, I underprojected Justin Tucker. He came in 43%. I had him at 22. I had him as the chalk kicker, but I just underestimated how strong the chalk would be. 2 years I had Jacksonville at 5. They came in at 20 on defense. So I think the team that people it's probably Houston where a decent amount of the stuff goes, because they're just like, I'm gonna soft fade this team, right? Like,
or Tampa, Washington, if people don't actually,
or Tampa, Washington. Yeah. Those are the two soft fades, I think.
Yeah, I just think Chargers Texans is going to separate from for the fade. I mean, it does not. No one wants to fade the highest total game on the slate with two explosive offenses. Like, just no one wants to do that. Whereas people can still think of the Chargers, the Harbaugh run the ball stigma, and the Texans are like the most fraudulent team in the playoffs. Like, it's the soft fade bowl.
It is a soft fade bowl for sure. What do you got for D?
For D, one sec. Chris got me here. Everyone going to condense on Cyber.
Yeah, that was. I watched that
too. All right, D. Pittsburgh, Houston, Green Bay, Washington, Denver. So I kept this fairly flat, but I think Houston probably comes up, and Washington probably comes up.
Yeah.
Baker throws picks. And I think people probably soft fade that game a little bit more than I have it.
I think people would rather play Washington D than Denver D.
Yep. Denver D.
Yeah.
It seems like the teams you should check this, Pat, because I could be wrong, but I feel like the teams that are the biggest underdogs sometimes get like fully faded even on the DST and the kicker.
Yeah, that's what we talked about earlier.
So last year, Pittsburgh 76% hard faded, and they were 95% total faded, and then Packers 59% hard faded and 74% total. Faded. For what it's worth, I over projected both of the hard fades there, though.
Yeah,
actually
maybe not.
They came in less.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
What do you have for hard fades here?
Hard fades.
The last one we haven't done. 65 and 50. I mean, I still feel like Denver, I think, is unique. I'm telling you guys, people just hate this team. They're spread out. They don't trust Bo Nix. I think it's going to be 75 to 80% hard fade. It's going to be absurd.
Well, not hard fade, but you mean hard fade? They're not going to play anything?
What was the highest last year?
I mean, like hard fade would be. Well, the highest was 76% for Pittsburgh, but they were 95% total faded.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that are we in that kind of range?
Probably not. Denver's D is good. There will be some people that talk themselves in a Denver's
probably D. Right here.
Yeah. I have them 85% total faded, which maybe is a little low. And then a bunch of that going through the hard fade.
I can't believe we're at 28% Green Bay fade, and it's probably like about right. So tilting.
I know.
Wait, you want that to be more or less?
I'm just tilted that this universe exists where that's reasonable.
Where they're not more of a fun playoff team?
Yeah.
I feel that.
It's surprising that they didn't try harder to win. It didn't end up mattering. But they're in a spot where they got to beat the two clear best NFC teams on the road. They got to beat the Eagles, and then even if they win that, they have to go to the Lions. They still have really good odds to win the NFC. They're like the fourth highest odds.
I was talking to Brat, who works with us at ETR, and he thinks those odds are just bad. Like, there's public money and they shift the odds, and
that might be right.
It's not a two-way market.
What? So he likes the Green Bay side?
No, he doesn't. Like their odds to go to the Super Bowl are pretty high relative to how hard their path is. Gotcha. Like if you looked at it just as, we think Green Bay's good, the odds make sense. But when you look at what Gretsch is saying, at Philly, at Detroit, at Minnesota, like
You're not doing it.
I mean, that's 9% seems kind of high when you look at it that way.
Yeah.
all
Even if you
right.
say they're better than all those teams, it's really unlikely that they win all 3 of those on the road.
They're
That's
only like
super hard.
34% to win round 1 or something. I mean,
Yeah, right.
Thank you guys all for helping us workshop these tonight. Very valuable conversation. Got some new members still trickling in. Make sure you guys sync those accounts in the Deposit Kingdom Discord, unlock the ship chasing channel, and go to the pinned messages. You can find those ownership projections if you want to review these. And as Pat tweaks them throughout the week, you should be able to see those updated as well. We're going to take tomorrow night off. We will be back on Thursday with Drico and Chris G. Going to maybe have a little bit of a hodgepodge. We'll do a couple underdog drafts. Chris G, former Gauntlet winner, and Drico, a playoff savant as well. So we'll have fun talking about a few different angles. And then on Friday, show's going to be a teeny bit later, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll get Leone back here, see if we can pry Dink away from his NBA spreadsheets. And we'll have, a drink or two and have one last powwow before the contest locks on Saturday. Anything else for you guys here as we wrap up the second night of playoff?
Shout out
challenge
Karain,
week?
I think, for the hard work on this. This is an awesome exercise. It takes I think we need to say that. I think we need to we need to double down on that. We've already said it, but the chat asked all these questions throughout, and I think you really get to how hard it is to go through this whole process and come to all the answers that Crane always comes to. And then when they've asked these questions, you guys have seen that he's had answers for a lot of them. There's reasons for a lot of the stuff, like Jameson Williams being as low as he was or whatever. When we went through all that, these are a really useful tool. If you want to play this contest, you can pick out the spots where you think it's too low or there's opportunities, there's leverage, what have you. But I trust Karain implicitly to get these right. And he's gotten them right every year. I mean, he's done really, really well on this.
And if he doesn't get them right, we just get to blame him. So it's really
it's a bad job by me to not bring you guys in, call this the ship chasing. We all put our heads together. it's low floor for me.
I will say we do normally quickly build a $35 team with some ideas knocking around in our heads. Someone mentioned that in the chat. You guys want to build a quick one here?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. I will register us right now and get this screen shared. Leone, you're a guest of honor. Who do you want to kick off this lineup with?
Josh Allen.
He just started smiling as soon as he said.
Wow. No hesitation.
Super Bowl MVP, Josh Allen.
You're not sure.
Just to be clear.
Yeah, no, I'm getting it up. I had to register. Okay. All right, here we go. Alpha plays only. Josh Allen is in.
He picked Josh Allen before you even had time to register.
That's right. All right. Well, we can just keep going around the horn like we normally do. I started to get pretty excited about the Amon-Ra stuff as we were talking about it. Let's toss him in as our wide receiver. Pat, the pick is yours.
Joe Mixon.
Okay.
It's a really good pick.
Here we go. I remember last year, I want to say it was the team we built the $35 with Hassan and Blair after the Monday or whatever, the early week episode, was a really good lineup that was cooking in the 35. So there's something to be said about your early week instincts here. Gretch?
Chat knows who you're playing.
Leone took a little bit of a chalk pick at first, but I think I want to get you to get a more of a unique one, Leone. So I'm going to take a chalk one here. So I'm going to take Puka for us.
Oh, that's not where I thought you were going. I love Puka. Are we snaking or we're just
it's back to
no, we're just going around.
Oh man, back to me. Okay. So we got, man, what do you do with Baltimore in a loss? I'm going to punt that decision to someone else. I kind of want to. I know I'm being boring and slow.
You're the guest of honor. We want you to influence the lineup.
I'll go AJ Brown.
Okay. AJ Brown. Here we go. We got Josh Allen, Joe Mixon, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, AJ Brown here. Let's go ahead, and I feel like this will be unique to not use, if we don't have Barkley and we don't have Bucky, let's keep this flipped and let's go Mike Evans.
Okay. I thought you
really
were
wanted to play Bucky
Gretch.
after he took
I
AJ
can't
Brown.
believe you didn't pick Bucky.
I know Gretch
No.
wants a redo. He wants a mulligan now for sure.
As soon
Big
as he
foot
took
down.
AJ Brown, I was like, well, then I want to take Josh Jacobs, and then we got both sides of that game, so I want to play Washington's kicker. I was like, doing all this shit in my head.
You
Anyway,
can still
Pat.
play Washington's
All
kicker, dude.
We,
Pat.
I think I am going to play Josh Jacobs.
Okay. See, this is why I think this is like the classic flip the build, right? Like you don't have Barkley, I guess TBD on Henry, but if we're playing them as a loss, and having just Mixon and Jacobs as your running backs, and then going to all these wide receiver pivots that
But
are
if you're
really strong
doing-
pivots.
We
is
have
fun.
arguably every team's best player, and this is super contrarian already.
Exactly.
I love
This
it.
is why you don't have to play Marvin Mims and Quentin Johnston.
Yes.
And Evans can beat Bucky in multiple games, but I guess I'm thinking if you play Packers to be pretty live to beat the Eagles, you're probably saying Bucks are hosting in the second round because they're the 3 seed. But I'll take Zane Gonzalez here. We can still do that with Evans, but yeah, there's a possibility the Bucks would play Austin
I
Scott
know.
I think
I
Evans and
know.
Bucky are pretty tight though. Like
in like 3 games though, 2 wins. Do you think it's still pretty tight?
I think so.
I think-
I mean,
Evans has a
Mike
ceiling,
gets there
you know.
and wins too. It's
Yeah.
not,
If,
I
if
mean,
they if they were
He's
to
such a
play like a
touchdown.
tough run defense or something, is there? I can't think of the brand. Would they ever match up with the Eagles? Like if they're, I still think we could see a negative game script. All Mike Evans, Rashad White on the field a ton. Like Bucky has a lower floor than over a multiple game sample. I feel like.
It's not crazy. I just have Bucky goggles.
I'm actually tilted. I wanted to go Dicker the kicker for
Oh, because you're mixing thing?
because my mixing thing.
We could have done Washington DSC. All right, I'll take that off. I took Naku on my last one. I'll do something more fun. Sorry. Pat
Zane
wants to
Gonzalez
take a
isn't
kicker.
fun.
Zane is pretty fun, considering we didn't even know he was playing about
Did
20
you hear
minutes
about the
ago.
jealousy battle?
No,
I'll do
Zane's
Mark
better than-
Andrews. I think we've already
Okay,
done Andrews
okay.
on last
Do
night's,
we,
but
so we? Oh, okay. We don't have tight end yet.
do we not want to do Andrews?
I think Andrews is good on this.
I mean, we're playing Baltimore to lose. I think Andrews is fine.
Or it's Jam Henry on here as
These
well.
these builds get weird though, where you're like, ooh, Henry in a loss, like Andrew, like the Baltimore side gets weird. You for sure.
Right.
Mhm.
Henry in a loss would be fine. I mean, he's gonna.
Well, he
It is
winning one
fine,
game and
yeah.
then losing.
Yeah.
All right, it is.
Well, that's
It's you,
better.
Leone.
Well, that's where I'm like I kind of want to just still play Kelsey, even though we have Andrews, but
We can.
I'm a little. So what team?
Make that Henry. Make that. I'll do a Henry instead of Andrews. We're playing 2
Oh, you
games.
can
for
do
Baltimore.
dude. You can do Andrews.
No, I don't
Andrews
think
is good.
I'm gonna be some chalk here. I'm gonna go. Given what we have, I think Justin Jefferson play. Do we want to play both sides of that though? Or
We can afford to do that.
okay, Justin Jefferson. I'll go Justin Jefferson. I think we can eat some chalk with the way this is setting up. Just go highest
Okay.
projected player on Minnesota.
Well then, there's Cyber. That's what's so funny that he pops it here from the points per game. He's the top kicker.
amazing.
That's why you saw it, right, Pat?
That's oh, man.
We got to
So-
hack into FFPC and remove that IR tag.
So if everyone is gonna soft fade the Texans Chargers, I like playing 2 skill positions. So let's put Lad in this one.
And
We
don't have a
now
G.
already have 3 head-to-heads. Just
That means we're fading the Chiefs, though, Pete.
Don't hate it. we could do Kelsey. We could do Kelsey and then
well,
fade.
if you do play both sides of the Houston Chargers game, you are kind of just saying like
soft fading
they're
the
gonna beat Kansas City.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'm just pointing out that we already have like
we have a ton of
3 wild card
contrarian pieces already. So yeah, let's play Kelsey. We can go 2 tight ends here.
And 2 tight end feels like it's going to be pretty contrarian. The reason when
It
you
will
said you
be.
wanted to play Kelsey, I was thinking coming off Andrews. Is I do think part of Andrews' case is that he wouldn't have to beat Henry straight up.
Yeah.
If he was just filling the tight end.
Give Pete his original pick back then.
Let's fade KC. So it's a $35 entry. Let's have some fun.
I kind of like, though. I mean, you're starting to play a specific bracket, but it's not. KC's going to be what, like 25% to lose if they play the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
a
more
little,
like 15
maybe a little
to
more
20 if they play Houston. That's not crazy.
All right, we got kicker and defense to wrap up here.
Who's that?
I'll go Butker just to get us the maybe they win 1 game and he's okay in 2.
When do you play their? I was thinking that because you're.
I kind of like Butker there.
Okay. Then I'll do Washington DST. I think you're playing Evans. You're playing pass attempts against.
Yeah.
You're playing a little bit of a shootout, but we didn't necessarily play a Washington player. But some potential for Baker, Saxon.
A note on the defensive scoring for people kind of coming over from underdog stuff. You want pass attempts against. It's not like a scoring system where like getting like a low scoring, don't score many points on them. That doesn't do shit for you. You need like sacks and interceptions and pick six. Like you actually really want pass attempts against.
I think after 10 points allowed, it literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's something insane.
Yeah. You'd have to have a shutout. Yeah.
I'm glad we build a team though, because you forget every year like how quickly it becomes pretty contrarian without even doing anything that crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. The other thing you realize from our stuff too is like how easy it is to get funneled to the same fades,
AKA,
over and over
Denver
again.
Pit.
Yeah. So that'll be that's a note for us. All right. Fun show. Did most of the promo stuff there a few minutes ago. We will see you guys on Thursday night for our next show with FFPC playoff week. Hop in the Discord, grab those ownership projections, and we'll see you guys then. Peace.